Chapter 1. To Issei it seemed like normal day. Little did he know the chain of events that were gonna be caused would affect him so much, he would have to embrace it. For the whole school day, everyone was avoiding him, even his friends in the orc. He didn't know why, he didn't know if he did anything to upset them or not. He couldn't figure it out at all. Dragon, did I do something to offend my friends? I don't remember doing anything that would make them act this way, thought Issei while trying to piece the puzzle together. I cannot say, partner. I will admit they are acting up for some reason. Which reason I don't know though, responded Dragon. Well, let's just hope it doesn't escalate too far or I will need to fix it, thought Issei. Soon the school bell was ringing, signaling the lunch period to start. Issei wasn't really hungry, but he went towards the cafeteria anyway. He still couldn't figure out what he had done to be outcasted by his friends and family. As he walked along the corridor of his classes, he kept on thinking, what just could he did? He had no clue at all. Was it something that he said that offended someone? All these unanswered questions he had would soon answer themselves, as he would be thrown into a situation he didn't expect. As he walked towards the cafeteria, he caught a glimpse of Aquino and Rias walking his way, most likely going towards their next classes for the day. He wanted to apologize for anything he could have done to upset them, so he walked normally towards, trying not to arouse any attention to himself, since the school didn't really like that he was close to the orc. As he neared them, he went to speak to try to apologize, but they just walked right past him like he didn't exist. Not a glance spared at him, no eye contact whatsoever. It only made him start to wonder even more about what he could have done. He didn't even go to the cafeteria. He needed to talk to someone before it went further than it needed. He soon found himself behind the door to the chemistry room. He was here to talk to his sensei Azazel to see if he possibly knew anything. So he knocked on the door. Soon after 5 minutes the door was opened for him, but something was off as well with Azazel. As soon as he knew who was there, he pretended to more interested in paperwork. Azazel, is there something that I don't know about that made everyone mad at me? Asked Issei, hoping for a good answer. Sorry, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Sorry, but I have to go. Got some assignments to grade for my next classes, spoke Azazel. Issei didn't know what that was about either. Azazel was being overly formal with him for whatever reasons there were. Okay, just what the fuck is going on with everyone? Thought Issei as he started to get frustrated. I have no idea, partner. It is truly strange and starting to be annoying, spoke Dragon in his head. As he walked back towards the cafeteria, he was starting now to panic, as he clearly had no idea what he could have possibly done to warrant this type of reactions from them. He wasn't even focused on going into the cafeteria. Soon he found himself sitting in the shade under the tree near the orc room. After a couple of minutes of sitting down, he heard what sounded like a window to him open. He looked at the school to see if anyone opened one of the windows, which there was none. Then he looked to the abandoned school building to see Rias looking out, but not at him. Soon she closed the window, but before she did he swore she took a quick glance, at which her eyes narrowed at him before closing it. Now he was really starting to worry, and he was also starting to get a little pissed, and he had a good reason to. No one spared him any words or a single glance the whole day. I'll ask them later what is going on once I get home, thought Issei. Soon the bell was ringing and everyone was rushing out of the hallways to get out of the building to go home. Issei was on his way out already. He originally planned on going straight home to talk to everyone, but he needed to think to himself without any distractions to hopefully narrow down any reasons why they were acting the way they were. Soon he was taking a detour to his house, one that was very familiar to him, but he didn't know exactly the way he was going. He was too busy thinking to himself. Before he knew it, his thoughts were interrupted by chilling wind. He looked around to find himself in an unforgettable area. He was looking at the fountain where his date, Yama, killed him. This is where it happened. Wait, why am I now just thinking about this? Thought Issei. Wait a minute, thought Issei while his face contorted in expression etched with fury. No way, it can't be right, can it? Dragon is what I'm thinking possible, asked Issei. I believe it is possible. Devils are beings of greed and desire. It's very likely she knew about it and took her chance as your savior to get you on her side without letting you know she knew it all along, responded Drake in a sad tone. Son of a bitch, cursed Issei as he started fuming with rage. Calm down, Issei. We do not need you going into an incomplete juggernaut drive transformation right now, spoke Drake, trying to avert disaster. Issei then took a few deep breaths, then sat down to calm himself down before it was too late. I mean, really, I might be a pervert, but I'm not an idiot. Did they think that I wouldn't find out eventually? Thought Issei. At first I thought you wouldn't amount to anything, honestly, spoke Drake. Not helping, seethed Issei. Let me finish what I was saying. Like I said at first, I didn't think you wouldn't really get that far. But as time went on, you drastically changed my views. In such a short time, you defeated Riser Phoenix, a person who was clearly out of your league, but you overcame the odds even if you had to use some unorthodox methods. Then you successfully held your own against Cockabeel, a cadre-class fallen that survived the Great War. Not many people can say they have went toe-to-toe with him and was able to do fairly well, not to mention also you forced Volley to retreat at the peace conference as well as absorbing the dividing gem into the boosted gear. I'm fairly certain you will prove to others that you are a hurricane of power that is not to be trifled with, explained Drake. Thanks, now just to deal with them. I don't know how this is gonna go, thought Issei as he got up from his spot and started towards his house. Soon he was right in front of the house, but he stopped a mere fraction of an inch from the knob. He felt many presences inside, powerful ones at that. Who all is here and why, thought Issei. I can't say either. No doubt something is going on and most likely dealing with you. Be careful, partner, responded Drake. He finally got the resolve to face his fears and open the door. He didn't see anyone when he walked in, but he saw a light coming from the kitchen, so he assumed that's where they were, so he walked that way. He wasn't clearly expecting what he saw, something that clearly confused as to why they were here. Sitting around the table was Rias' peerage as well as Sona's, along with Surzech, Grafia, Azazel, Aquino's father Barakil, and Sona's sister Serafal. As soon as he entered the room, he was the center of attention with everyone looking at him. He could have sworn he saw Rias smirking once she saw him. Issei, you're no longer needed. I'm kicking you out of my peerage, spoke Rias with her smirk. What, why? Asked Issei, panicking. Honestly, all you were good for was getting me out of my marriage with that prick Riser. Other than that, you're not needed, and I never really wanted you in it in the first place, spoke Rias. You're just a shallow pervert, nothing else, spoke Kaneko. Issei, you are no longer a part of my family, spoke Surzech. I may be a bit of a pervert, but even I know my limits, whereas you don't, spoke Azazel. So this is how you repay me, huh? Whispered Issei. No one knew that they just set in motion a chain of events that would come back to bite them in the ass later in their lives. Just leave already before you cause more harm than good, Issei, spoke Kiba while narrowing his eyes. I don't want to be your friend anymore, Issei-san, it's too much, spoke Asia. I don't want my child to have a perverted father, spoke Zenobia with her eyes narrowed. They couldn't see his eyes turn emerald since they were shadowed. Very well, but before I go, I got something to say to you all, spoke Issei. We don't care, spoke Aquino, annoyed. Oh, but you will, spoke Issei while laughing. How so? Asked Azazel. I may be a pervert, but at least I don't have your guys' problems. Did you guys ever stop to think that I was someone who needed help? I helped you with your fucking problems, then you go behind my back and decided to abandon me. Fuck you and all of your problems. For one, I'll start with Ria's severe case of greed. I know about the date with Rainier, also that you would be royally fucked 6 ways from Sunday from Riser if I hadn't saved you. And you know it's true, spoke Issei. Everyone's eyes widened. It looked like he was about to rip into each and every one of them, and there was nothing they could do about it. They had brought it upon themselves. Next is Kiba, the dimwit of the group. Are you homosexual or something? Seriously, all the girls at the school fawn over you, but you don't make a move. I may be a pervert, but I know how to treat a lady. I'm surprised you haven't tried to give Gasper a rim job or something, since you clearly have no interest in any females whatsoever, spoke Issei again, making everyone shocked. Then you have Kaneko, the flat-chested, emotionless midget that has the appetite of a fucking sumo wrestler, who also can't get over that fact of her sister abandoning her. It's called family for a reason, spoke Issei while fuming with rage. Everyone was starting to get scared as his power was rising by the moment. The pressure started to build. Then you have Akino, who's one step closer to going full-blooded homicidal yandere with her S&M fantasies. You say I have problems? Check again, spoke Issei. Don't even get me started on Asia. She has to copy everything you guys do to try to gain some attention, and you call me shallow, mocked Issei. Zenobia, all she fucking cares about is trying to have my kid, literally to the point of bringing condoms inside the classroom, spoke Issei. Irina isn't here right now. Since she's my childhood friend, I know she wouldn't be like this, spat Issei. Then you got Gasper, the cross-dressing male of the group, who is so scared of the world he hides in a fucking cardboard box. Severe need of therapy, not adoration. You guys are fucking making it worse each passing moment you smother his effeminate ass, spoke Issei. Then you have the adults of the group. First, Azazel, who says he has his perversion under control. Please, I guarantee you his studies are filled with magazines and posters of his own fallen angels turned sluts, spoke Issei again, shocking everyone. Then you have Surzets, the siscon of the ages, who's too stuck up since he the Mao to notice that his wife is probably sneaking out at night to get railed by a couple of black dudes with elephant-sized dicks while thanking the heavens for the best gangbang in ages, since there's no way you are pleasing her with that pitiful excuse of severe case of erectile dysfunction. I mean, seriously, I bet you'd be lead on for a while she has two. Face it, it's just one of those political marriages, laughed Issei. Then you have the fucking Citries, easily stuck up, strict as hell. Serafal is the childish runt of the group who is supposed to be a Mao, spoke Issei. That's your fucking problems, so when you say I have problems when you clearly are the worst of the two, fucking shut the hell up and fix yours first, spoke Issei. I'm done here. I hope the next host of the Red Dragon Emperor is told about the greed of the three factions, spoke Issei. Everyone was utterly speechless at the thrashing he handed out. Purge, both of their voices sang in unison. After that word rang out, a bright red light flashed for a few seconds before dying down, revealing a panting and bloody Issei, and in his hands were 8 pawn pieces. See you all in hell, bitches, spoke Issei before collapsing. Well, that was clearly unexpected, spoke Azazel, trying to clear the uneasy silence. Just teleport his body someplace random. I don't have time to deal with him, spoke Rias, frustrated. Soon a magic circle enveloped Issei, and his dead body disappeared. Scene break unknown. Issei awoke in a place he didn't know where it was. All he could see was a trail that seemed to be endless, but he couldn't really see due to all the mist covering the area. Am I dead? Thought Issei. You should be, partner, responded D-Drake. D-Drake, if I'm dead, shouldn't you be on to your next host? Thought Issei, confused. Normally yes, but it seems something stopped it for a reason. Maybe you attracted someone's attention, and did you really have to say all that to them? Spoke D-Drake. HMPH, I needed to vent and they betrayed me, so yeah, responded Issei. Well, whatever the reason we're here should reveal itself soon, spoke D-Drake. And he was right. Issei Hyoudou spoke an extremely powerful voice. Issei quickly spun to see a huge dragon that was covered in gray and red scales. It easily was twice the size D-Drake. No way, not possible, spoke D-Drake. D-Drake, you know who that is? Asked Issei. Ah, D-Drake, how have you been? Long time since I fought against you, spoke the dragon. Issei swore he could have heard D-Drake gulp. Issei, this is Bahamut, the true Dragon God of Annihilation, easily more powerful than Great Red. If he saved you, then there was a big reason, spoke D-Drake. Is that true? Asked Issei. Yes, I can get you back to the land of the living, but I have reasons. You see, I was known to be the one to bring about the end of the world, or Armageddon. But ever since I died, you could say I matured and watched from the underworld to see the world growing to show some pretty interesting stuff. I saw what happened to you. Honestly, the three factions are in need of a huge reality check. That is one condition if I help you, spoke Bahamut. What is the other one? Asked Issei, confused. For too long dragons have been getting scarcer and scarcer. I want you to rebuild the dragon faction, make them the respected beings we once were. I will give you the power to change someone into a dragon. That is the other condition I have for you," responded Bahamut. "Okay, then I accept," spoke Issei. "Very well, I will seal myself in a sacred gear and give it to you. Armageddon's Descent is its name. Combined with D-Drag, you will be unstoppable. You will need my power for the trials ahead of you to get back to the land of the living," spoke Bahamut. Soon a bright light enveloped the whole sky as Bahamut disappeared. Issei then heard a new voice inside his head. "Okay, Issei, step through that portal to begin your journey to the top," spoke Bahamut in his head. And so Issei stepped inside the portal that opened next to him to begin his new journey back to the land of the living. Chapter 2, The Journey PT1. Character bio for Issei's new abilities. Sphere of Sphere, created of pure energy, highly volatile and destructive. Armageddon's Call awakens primal power within Issei, giving him tremendous speed and strength and massive energy bursts. Rain of Annihilation calls upon destructive weather to tear apart the area around him. He also has Balance Breaker and Juggernaut Drive with Bahamut's sacred gear. Harem Yes Rainer, Kalawarner Tiamat Kuroka. No Rias Sona Kaniko Serafal Grafia. Maybe Akino Offis Penemu Ravel Unebella Murayama Kades Kiom. Maybe a Fem Valley. Issei awoke in a really unfamiliar place. He had no clue as to where he was, but he knew for sure he wasn't back in the world of the living. He assumed it was the realm of the dead. "Where am I, D-Drag Bahamut?" asked Issei while getting up to his feet. He took a look around. To him it looked similar to the underworld, but he knew he possibly couldn't be there. "You are in Hades's realm. The souls of the dead are here for eternity until they either get reincarnated or return to the void as nothing," spoke Bahamut. "So how do I get back?" asked Issei, confused. "The Well of Souls, it is the gateway between the two realms. If you can get in it, you can return. You will need all the power you can get since it is heavily guarded," responded Bahamut. "Partner, I suggest gathering a few allies to help you," spoke D-Drag. "How that's strange," spoke D-Drag. "What's a strange D-Drag?" asked Issei, confused. "It seems that when Bahamut sealed himself inside of you, it negated the curse of the Juggernaut Drive. Truly strange," explained D-Drag. "Juggernaut Drive, what's that?" asked Issei. "I forgot you haven't had a transformation yet. The Juggernaut Drive is a move that temporarily removes the seal on my full power, allowing you to become extremely powerful for a limited time. Usually the Juggernaut Drive has a curse that make the host usually go insane, but Bahamut's emergence somehow negated it," responded D-Drag. "Okay then, need to find a place to think it all over so I can get a game plan," thought Issei as he walked on. Soon after what seemed like an eternity of walking, he ended up in an old-looking town, clearly poor by standards. He needed some information, and a few able-bodied allies who could handle themselves in a fight. So he did the natural thing that came to his mind and walked into the bad part of the town. He pretty much followed the stench of blood and ruins of the buildings that were near him. He soon found an old run-down tavern or bar. He assumed this is where all the people hung out, and he expected to find some brawls happening. He soon opened the door to find that inside, it was packed. Mostly every table that was in there was filled, and he could tell there was a lot of strong people in here, some more so than others. But as soon as he stepped inside, people turned to him. He could tell he wasn't welcome at all, so he just smirked and went to the counter where the bartender was serving a customer. "Be wary of a fight breaking out. It's obvious you're not welcome here. Be prepared to show them what you can do, partner," spoke D-Drag. "They are ants compared to you now. Your new abilities and strength far outclass even the Mao's Issei. If it comes to it, destroy the bar to prove a point," spoke Bahamut while chuckling. "Son, I suggest you state your business here, then hit the road. You may not like the result if you stay too long," spoke the bartender. "I doubt if anyone here could be of use to me anyways. I just need a drink before I go," scoffed Issei. That's when he heard a few footsteps coming towards him and 3 voices behind him, which sounded familiar. "Please, he already overstayed his welcome. This isn't the place for a brat," spoke a male. "Donasik, I think you had too much to drink, but I agree this ain't a place for brats or kids," spoke a girl who was astoundingly familiar to Issei. Issei felt like his heart stopped. He stopped breathing altogether. He needed to get out of there fast or else the bar would be blown to smithereens. The bartender caught sight of the expression Issei had on. "Drag, tell me what I heard was just some fucked up hallucination due to the alcohol," thought Issei, trying not to explode with fury. "I'm sorry, partner, but that is what you heard, and they do have the auras of fallen angels," responded Drag. "Hey kid, are you alright? You look like you've seen a ghost or something," spoke the bartender. "Is this brat scared or something? Donasik and Rainair, what did you guys do to make a kid this scared, haha?" asked a new voice. "Calawarner, he just wandered in here for no reason," spoke Donasik. "And he told him to get lost, then he started to act like that," spoke Rainair. A low growl escaped from Issei's lips and they heard it. "What was that, brat?" asked Donasik menacingly. Then Issei stood up and uttered one sentence that shocked everyone to their cores. "I'm sorry for taking your time, sir, but before I leave, I got one question. Can you point me in the direction of the Well of Souls?" spoke Issei quietly, but everyone heard him. "Are you insane? The Well of Souls is heavily guarded. No one has ever passed through it without Hades' permission," shouted Rainair. That's when their world was shocked even more by one other sentence that was uttered. "Maybe I am Yuma, after all you know just who I am," spoke Issei with his eyes clenched. Rainair backed up in fear quickly. Everyone's eyes widened and they backed up quickly from Issei as he summoned his boosted gear. Issei asked Rainair quietly. "Who else? I'm Issei Hyoudou, possessor of Drag, the Welsh dragon, and now Bahamut, the Annihilation dragon god," spoke Issei as he summoned his other sacred gear. The Armageddon's descent looked similar to the boosted gear, except it was gray and red, and it covered his entire right arm as well as it looked sharper, and it was emitting a powerful energy off of it. Everyone stared at it in awe of what it was releasing. "I will ask again, where is the Well of Souls? I plan on returning to the world of the living," spoke Issei. Everyone was utterly shocked at the power he was radiating. They knew he was deadly serious about it, so the bartender pulled out a map and pointed to a small area near the end of the map. It was quite the distance away, clearly for security purposes. "Once again, I'm sorry for taking your time. I will leave now. I have a goal to complete," spoke Issei as he stood up and walked out, not sparing any glances towards the fallen that were scared shitless. As soon as he stepped outside, he spared no more moments and started on his way, but he was soon stopped as he heard scurrying footsteps behind him. He wasn't surprised when he saw the 3 fallen behind him, not daring to make eye contact. "What the fuck do you want?" spat Issei. "Please, Issei, take us with you," begged Rainair. "Why should I?" mocked Issei, who was trying not to level the town with his rage. Neither Calawarner or Donasik dared to speak out of fear, but Rainair continued anyways. "I know I did you wrong, but I was under orders from Cockabil. I actually had fun on our dates," whispered Rainair, but Issei heard every word of it. And he didn't know what to think. He was already betrayed by his old loved ones, so what was he supposed to do? Could she be lying? I don't know. I don't think I can take another heartbreak, or I might just destroy everything, thought Issei. "I think she's telling the truth. Cockabil did trick her and she does look truly sorry. It's up to you," responded Drag. After a few moments of tense silence, Issei finally came to an answer. "Fine, but a warning, you cross me and I won't hesitate to rip you limb from limb twice over," spat Issei. They weren't expecting him to accept it. They knew they had to earn his trust. Rainair might have had it easier, but there was still tension between the two, and there would be until Issei could accept her without hesitating. Chapter 3: The Journey PT2. If Issei were to tell you that he was unstable, he would be telling you the truth, but he would be understating it by a whole lot. He was fucking livid. He didn't want to think about anything and just blow some shit up. He really wanted to vent his frustration, but he calmed himself down in order to avert a disaster and turned to the 3 fallen angels who were coming with him. "Do you have anywhere to stay? I need to rest and figure out a game plan," asked Issei tiredly. The 3 fallen looked at each other for a bit, until Rainier spoke up. "I have an apartment that we can use, not that big, but it will fit us all," responded Rainier. Issei sighed to himself and looked up to the sky, muttering a few words that were unheard by the rest of the group. He contemplated just leaving them here and heading straight for the well, but he decided against it since he would need all the allies he could gather for what he had planned. "It will work for now," spoke Issei tiredly. Soon he was following the 3 fallen angels on the sidewalk as they arrived at a 3-story apartment complex, broken windows, clearly run down. But it worked for now. Before he knew it, they were sitting around a table, with them all looking at him expectantly. They definitely had a lot of questions he needed to answer. "Okay, I know you guys must have a lot of questions for me, so ask away," spoke Issei. "What happened to you? I thought you were close to those devils. How did you die and why didn't they save you?" asked Rainier. "Well, let's put it this way, I was only useful to them for a little bit, and that was to get that bitch of a devil heiress out of her forced marriage. Then about the time the peace conference happened, they decided it was time to get rid of me like I was yesterday's trash. Long story short, I ripped into each and every one of them about their own problems, then I purged all my evil pieces," explained Issei. "Then how do you still have D-Drag? If you died, shouldn't have he passed on to his next host?" asked Calawarner, confused. "Well, yes, normally, but I guess Bahamut brought me to a purgatory state to give me a choice, keep D-Drag and gain a second sacred gear to help go back to the land of the living, of course at a cost, or just stay dead," spoke Issei. Everyone's eyes widened at his story. That's why he was the way he was. He was abandoned by everyone that he thought were his friends and family. Now he didn't know who he could trust if they would just betray him like his old friends and family. Rainier was truly saddened, and she made up her mind to help him. "What cost did you have to pay?" asked Donasik, confused. "Bahamut had 2 conditions, but now that I think about it, one was just for fun, since he knew I would get back at them. He wants me to give the 3 factions a huge reality check, and boy will I. Then the other was to rebuild the dragon faction," spoke Issei. Everyone was astonished at his goals. To rebuild the whole dragon faction was nearly impossible, since normally someone couldn't be turned into dragons like devils or fallen. Even the angels had an reincarnation system, but the dragons didn't, and they were slowly dying out. "How are you going to rebuild the dragon faction?" asked Rainier. "Bahamut said he gave me the power to turn people into dragons, so I guess when the time comes I'll figure it out," responded Issei. "What are you going to do about the 3 factions?" asked Calawarner. "I have a bone to pick with the devils and Azazel as well, so it won't be an easy punishment at all. As for heaven, a simple meeting may suffice. If not, I may resort to some more drastic measures," spoke Issei. "Man, I hate to be the unlucky people who are going to feel your wrath. Even Azazel is gonna be scared shitless when he sees you again," muttered Donasik. "You have no idea how pissed I am. Surzech, it's the first person on my list. Gonna use him as an example," spoke Issei while chuckling. Then he looked to the clock to see what time it was, and it was late. He was extremely tired. "Is there somewhere I can rest? I need to think to myself for a bit about what the future holds," asked Issei. "There's a room upstairs, first door on your left. You can use it," responded Rainier. Soon he was upstairs, leaving the 3 downstairs to think to themselves about his story and their future. They all felt truly sorrowful and a bit of rage of what happened. They needed to get on his good side, since his enemies wouldn't be given any pity at all. Rainier saw this as her chance to try to rebuild the bridge between them, so she went upstairs to talk to him privately. She found herself standing behind the door, hesitating to knock on it. She hoped she could actually get somewhere with him. "Issei, can I come in? I want to talk," spoke Rainier outside the door. She heard a reply telling her to come in, so she opened the door and stepped inside. She was met with an unexpected result. A shirtless Issei. Jesus, was he this packed? Thought Rainier with a monumental blush creeping on her face. What did you want to talk about? Asked Issei. Listen, Issei, I know we may not be on the best of terms, but I would really love to actually be with you. I'm not asking you to accept me right away. Just give me a second chance, please. That's all I ask. Rainier pleaded as she hoped for a good sign. Deep down, Issei knew there was still a spot she had in heart, but it was a matter if the past would continue to haunt him or not. He didn't know if he could trust anyone yet, since he just got abandoned by the ones who he thought loved him. She heard him sigh to himself, most likely thinking about it. That's when he closed his eyes. It seemed like time stopped as she waited for his answer. She was holding in a breath that seemed like it went on for eternity, when he opened them again. They weren't filled with rage, just calmness. They were actually softened. She saw a small smile come across his face for a brief second. Fine, I'll give you a chance, responded Issei after a while of thinking. She was astonished at how quickly he decided. The only thing she could do was let the tears fall and rush to him and hug him for all what was of worth. He was shocked at the bone-crushing hug she enveloped him in. He definitely wasn't expecting this reaction from her. Okay, calm down. I need to sleep for tomorrow. We have a lot ahead of us, spoke Issei. What are we doing? Asked Rainier, confused. Training. Breaking into the Well of Souls will not be easy. We need to get stronger as a team and come up with a good plan, spoke Issei. Okay then, responded Rainier before dragging him onto the bed and using him as hugging pillow. Ugh, not point in arguing with her now. I'm clearly not winning it, just gonna sleep, thought Issei. What do you expect? You said it yourself you would give her a second chance. The girl's emotions were clearly bottled up the moment when she first saw you at the bar. Now that you have calmed her fears, she couldn't hold herself back, spoke Dragon. I just have this nagging feeling that this is only the start. More girls now will start to flock to me with this power. Fights will surely break out, responded Issei. So what, partner? You've always had the girls fighting for you. It's nothing new, just new ones replacing the bastard old ones, spoke Dragon. Guess you're right, no use getting worked up now about it. What's done is done, thought Issei. Exactly, you need to focus on whipping them into shape. Their current strength won't do them any good in a fight against one of Hades' minions, responded Dragon. About that, Dragon and Bahamut, any ideas on what I can expect there? Asked Issei. You can obviously expect a small force of somewhat guarding the outside, while a few squads inside, maybe a few scouts outside as an early warning system, responded Bahamut. Okay then, a nighttime approach to be shrouded by darkness, then pick off the ones outside by separating them, then go for the ones inside, thought Issei as he started to piece his plan together. Soon the warm embrace of the girl sleeping next to him pulled him in a deep sleep. Scene break. Morning. When awoke from his sleep, he shouldn't have been surprised with what he saw. After all, he did remember last night's events, but this was a little more unexpected. Both Calawarner and Rainier each had one of his arms clenched between their breasts, and their grip was like steel. He was barely able to move at all without waking them both up. Cuckoo, partner, 2 new busty girls added to your harem. It won't be long before more come to you, chuckled Dragon. Amusing to say at the least, but you must focus. They need to be ready when you go for the well, spoke Bahamut, amused. Issei groaned and finally managed to free himself from the girl's grasp and made his way downstairs. It was still pretty early, he noticed as he looked at the clock. He expected the others not to be up yet, but as he arrived downstairs, he saw Donosik sitting in the living room watching the underworld news. So he did the natural and sat down, rubbing his eyes, trying to get the leftover sleepiness gone. Sup, boss, so what's the plan? Asked Donosik. First off, just call me Issei or Issei. Never was one for any sort of honorifics. As for today, well, I'm gonna wait till everyone is present to explain the situation and ask some questions of my own, responded Issei. Anything I can answer for you? Asked Donosik. Okay, out of you guys, what are the power rankings and who's best at what? Asked Issei. Well, I'm the brawn of the group, you could say, while Calawarner is the brains with magic. She was always the smartest even if she doesn't look like it. Rainier is the deceptive one, the one to go behind with finesse, as you already know, responded Donosik with a sly smile. Issei just huffed at that statement. Okay then, for the first few days we are going to do some training to build a good strategy. Getting through the well's defenses won't be easy. You guys need to be stronger if we're gonna make it, spoke Issei. Very well, I can take that easily, responded Donasik with a grin. Also, wasn't there a fourth member of your group? I forgot her name though, Issei asked confused. Oh, Mittelt, let's just say that Calawarner and Rainier had a falling out with her. She decided to go her own way. Haven't seen or heard from her in quite a while, Donasik replied. Great, now just to wait for the others, spoke Issei. What about us? Asked Rainier as she came down with Calawarner. To explain the situation, spoke Issei. What is the situation? Asked Calawarner. The well is heavily guarded as we thought. Based on what me and my dragons discussed last night, we will have quite the resistance when we strike. So for the next few days we are going to train as a team so we won't get killed the moment we get spotted, explained Issei. Where will we train? Asked Donasik confused. When I first came here, I saw a good area that was deserted near a mountain. We will be undisturbed there. I'm going to push each and everyone to break through their limits. Be prepared to be put through the ringer, spoke Issei. Bring it, challenged Donasik with a grin. Fine by me, Calawarner said. Let's go, Rainier screeched happily. Scene break, mountains. Soon the four of them found themselves standing in the mountains far away from anyone who would disturb them. Okay, first things first, I'm going to test every one of you to see where you are. You're first up, Donasik, spoke Issei. Okay, what do you want me to do? Donasik asked, not knowing what to do. Before anyone could guess what Issei was thinking, they all heard the boosted gear call out a command that both intrigued them and confused. Blade, shouted the dragon booster as the familiar red light brightened up the whole area. When it died down, they were surprised and a little frightened by what they saw, a holy sword. Is that? Calawarner asked breathlessly. Escalon, the dragon-slaying sword. I got it from Michael the Archangel just before the peace conference and merged it with the boosted gear, explained Issei while slashing the ground few times for a warm-up. Okay, Donasik, what I want you to do is throw a light spear at me. If I can slice through it with this sword, it needs work then, spoke Issei. It would be my pleasure, responded Donasik with a grin. Before anyone else could see what was going on, Issei switched into his stance as he waited for the spear to come. In a second, Donasik threw his light spear as hard as he could towards Issei. Rainier and Calawarner thought he threw it a little too hard, but as they watched Issei, they noticed that he was calm and collected as soon as he caught sight of the spear coming towards him. Issei dashed forwards and did a downward slash, effectively slicing it into two halves. Everyone stared at the two halves of the spear as it started to dissolve. Say, that spear wasn't very well made. You need to put more into it. Magic itself has its limits and stipulations, but there has always been ways to get around those without major consequences. Think of it this way, devil magic is unstable, while holy magic is stable. Devil magic is naturally unstable since most of them are destructive and powerful, while holy magic is more of a supportive. But don't get me wrong, holy magic can be extremely powerful if you know how to use it properly, explained Issei. Now I'm not an expert on magic, so don't think like that. I can't use the advanced techniques, but I know basic stuff and how magic fundamentally works. There are a multitude of ways to increase your magical potential. One way is your reserves. The stronger your body, the more it can handle before your body breaks down on the inside. With holy magic, you're pretty much using your imagination to create a spear. The more stable it is, the stronger, explained Issei. Calawarner, since you're the magic person of the group, making a light sword should be easy for you, right? Issei asked Calawarner. She looked at him for a moment while contemplating the idea. Okay then, I guess I can try, Calawarner replied with a shrug. She then closed her eyes and began to focus as the others watched her in anticipation. Soon a bright white light started to form in her hands. It started to grow in size. Soon after the light died down, she held in her hands a small light sword. Very good, with more practice you can get used to it and make a better one. A sword will come in handy if you get in a tight situation and can't throw a spear, spoke Issei. Okay then, I will continue to practice with my sword, replied Calawarner. Rainier, you are the deceptive type, the one to go behind someone's back with finesse and deal a finishing blow, explained Issei. As soon as the three heard this, both Calawarner and Donasek smirked while Rainier looked down. "Don't worry, I won't hold it against you, but I will push you harder as a little payback," spoke Issei with a grin. They all smiled at that statement. Rainier gave a challenging grin back at him. "So what do you want me to do?" asked Rainier, confused. "For you to be a good fighter with your skill set, you need quick reflexes and good speed. You need to be able to make split-second decisions and act on them as fast as you made them. For now, you're going to come at me and try to punch me. Land 5 successful strikes and we will take it up a notch. I won't be going easy though," explained Issei. "Drag 5 boosts and put them in my reflexes," Issei said in his head. "Right on," responded Drag. Everyone was waiting for Rainier to move to attack. As they saw Issei get in a stance, they prepared for a good spar. That's when they heard the dragon booster. "Boost X5. Everyone's eyes widened as they heard the boosted gear call out. They now knew he was taking this seriously, so they had to be on their guard and take it seriously as well. Before anyone knew it, Rainier had unfurled her wings and dashed towards Issei with quick speed. But Issei could see her movements clearly. As she threw a right hook trying to connect with his jaw, he quickly tilted his head back, making her miss by mere centimeters. He gave a grin, knowing this would be fun as she continued her assault on him. She then tried to sweep him out from under his feet, but he saw through that too as he jumped in the air. He saw Rainier narrow her eyes as she lunged at him another time and actually managed to land an uppercut to his jaw. All of them widened their eyes as they saw him fly back in the air from the blow she delivered to him. "Issei, are you all right?" Rainier screeched as she realized she might have put a little too much force into that punch. "Yeah, I'm fine. That was one good punch, Rainier. Someone without my strength would have been definitely knocked out easily," Issei said after getting up off the ground. "I will say this, you're doing better than I expected. You're already using your speed to your advantages, but try to mix up your strikes a little more often or the enemy will be able to predict what you will do," Issei commented as he got into his stance again. He made a motion for her to come at him, and she did. He had to admit to himself that they exceeded most of his first expectations. He knew in a couple days they would be ready and would tear through the well like a hurricane. Chapter 4: The Well of Souls. Harem update. Yes, Rainier, Calawarner, Tiamat, Kuroka, Irina, Femvali, Offis, Yasaka. No Rias, Sona, Serafal, Grafia, Kaneko, Midelt, Ravel. Maybe Gabriel, Kades, Murayama, Ubaluna, Penemu, Aquino, Kiyom. As Issei looked back on the few days his new group spent training, he had to admit he was impressed. They had come quite the lengths in the short amount of time they used. Donasek was able to make multiple spears at once, and they were strong as well, not to mention he was far more powerful than before. Calawarner had built quite the magical reserves for the training she did. She was able to make a very good sword with enough holy power to kill a middle-class devil. She was also able to manipulate the light magic into making some grenades. Rainier had for the most part been able to go toe-to-toe with Issei when he was at 10 boosts. She won a lot of the sparring matches they had. He was currently watching the TV in the living room. Everyone was resting since they were going to attack the well tomorrow night. He was brought out of his thoughts as Bahamut started to talk out of nowhere. "Issei," Bahamut said as he clearly needed to talk. Issei didn't know what he could want, he could only assume. "Yes," Issei responded to the dragon in his head. "I think it's time I elaborate on your situation a bit before you go back to the real world," Bahamut spoke suddenly. "What do you mean situation? What are you hiding?" Drag interrupted suddenly. He was clearly worried for his host. "Calm down, Drag, it is not bad at all. I hid it from you guys so you wouldn't worry," Bahamut spoke back. "Worry about what? What is going on?" Issei asked. "I'm going to be blunt, Issei. You're going to become a dragon god, more powerful than you can imagine. You think the power you have now is amazing? Just wait till you get back to the land of the living," Bahamut joked. "What do you mean?" Issei asked, clearly confused. "For you to understand, I'll need to elaborate a little more. The tools or weapons you call sacred gears. It is common belief among the supernatural world that only the God of the Bible was the one to seal beings into sacred gear. But the truth is that it is just a spell, and can be used by any supernatural being with the capabilities required. Now there are 2 ways to seal a being into sacred gear. One is the way that God did it. The way those sacred gears work is the way the sacred gear is given to its host. Binding, in short, binding is a temporary bond between the host and the soul trapped within the gear, allowing the host to temporarily tap into its power, hence the boosted gear. It requires you to get stronger to be able to use more power from it. The other way is the way I did it. It is merging. It is a quick way to do it. Not many beings use this way since the effects. Merging gives the full power of the being that was sealed firsthand to the host, effectively making him extremely powerful right of the bat. The reason that most beings don't use this way is due to the fact of its results. The main difference between binding and merging is that merging is permanent. Once the host dies, the being in the gear dies as well. Hence, binding results in the being will be passed on to its next host after the previous one dies. Explained Bahamut. If it does that, why did you do it? Issei asked, confused. There are few work loopholes to it. If the being is a god or has god-like power, they can be sent to purgatory. Hence I was there. Now that is through I will explain what I said about you being a dragon god, Bahamut said. What about it? Responded Issei, confused. You have inherited all of my power. You are going to become a true dragon god. You haven't noticed it yet since you are in the land of the dead. Your real body is like a shell in the real world without its soul. The moment you enter the well and go back there, the changes will start to occur as you develop into a dragon god. It won't happen as soon as you get back. Your body will adapt to the real world at first, then they will start to occur, Bahamut explained. What will happen? Issei asked, wondering what he was in store for. After a few days in the real world, you'll start to notice your magic reserves will grow exponentially. Then your senses will evolve, becoming more powerful. Then for a few days you will be in an incredible amount of pain as your body breaks itself and rebuilds it as a dragon over and over again. Then finally you will turn into a full dragon form before reverting back to human form, completing the process, Bahamut said, letting it sink in. So you're saying I'm going to undergo a transformation of some type? Asked Issei. Precisely, your body will be evolving to handle the amount of power you have been given. There is also more. Your power will be easily recognizable, as many supernaturals can measure the amount of power someone has. Let me put it this way, you will be both feared and respected for your power, and there will always be gods and other supernaturals who will want to challenge you. That is the way it is, spoke Bahamut. He is telling the truth, especially dragons. They are beings of pride. Power attracts power. It is inevitable, Dragon commented. Bahamut, exactly how long will this whole process take? Issei asked, not knowing how long it would be. I cannot say for sure, though the first parts will pass by in a few days, then the final parts will be delayed a bit. Most likely the whole process will be a week or two, Bahamut responded. Okay, now a few questions. You said that our real bodies are in the real world, so when we go through the well we will need to regroup, asked Issei, trying to piece a plan together. Precisely, you guys will need to regroup once entering the well, responded Bahamut. Okay, then need to rework the plan a bit before we head out, thought Issei as he needed to talk to the group again about what he found out. Soon everyone was awake and they started walking downstairs. This was perfect for Issei as he needed to let them know. Guys, come here, there's been a change in the plan, nothing too serious, just needed to go over some new stuff, Issei said to the group as they arrived downstairs. Okay, what is it? Donasik responded. The moment we enter the well we will need to regroup, so we will meet up at the abandoned church. Once you get there, do not make sudden movements. We do not need the devils to know of our return. Second, I'm going to be going through a transformation when we're in the land of the living, explained Issei. What kind of transformation? Rainer asked, worried. It seems that Bahamut neglected to mention that giving me his power will ultimately turn me into a dragon god, one with more power than I can imagine. He predicts the whole process will take about 2 weeks, explained Issei. What are the symptoms? Kalawarner asked, confused. He said at first, my energy reserves will exponentially grow, allowing powerful amounts of magic. Then my senses will start to evolve as I start to become a true dragon. Then my body will start to tear itself apart as it rebuilds it continuously. Then finally I will turn into a full dragon form before reverting to my human form, completing the process, spoke Issei. Now everyone's eyes had widened. He was going to be more powerful than they could imagine. They could only imagine the things that were going through his head. That's why we will be hidden for the first week or so as we wait for the process to complete. People will start to sense my energies as they grow. We will no be idle, though of course not. More like covert, trying to find out what the devils are up to, explained Issei. I think we need a better base than that church though, Donasik said. I agree, it will only be temporary until we can secure a good place to start, Issei said. Okay then, everyone get some rest for tomorrow since we strike at midnight, spoke Issei. Everyone nodded and went on about their day as they usually did. Scene break, midnight. The group finds themselves on a ridge looking over the Well of Souls, preparing for their return. Issei could tell that it was truly guarded well. He could see a few patrolling groups walk along the wall that guarded it. He could tell he was in the right spot due to the blue light that rose up into the sky from the ground. Truly a wonder to behold, he thought. Okay, you guys know the plan. Calawarner, you distract them, will a couple of light grenades in the distance to separate, then Rainier, you strike fast and hard, effectively taking them out. Then we regroup and head on inside and push forward, taking out anyone in our path, Issei said. They all gave a nod and went to work. Calawarner threw 3 light grenades off to the east side of the mountain, causing a lot of commotion among the guards, making them scatter like it was nothing. Calawarner then nodded to Rainier, who formed 2 light daggers that radiated a lot of holy power, and they were sharp as hell. She dashed away quicker than even Issei could spot. He was impressed at the speed and reflexes she gained with her training. She quickly appeared behind several guards, slicing each of their throats, thus cutting the jugular vein, causing them to gasp out for breath as they quickly died from blood loss. She disappeared once again after finishing off the rest of the scattered guards. It was a massacre. It definitely looked like a beast had raged on the outside. No one was left. They regroup and made their way towards the main entrance. They stopped right behind it. All right, guys, this is it. No holding back in there. It's kill or be killed, spoke Issei. They all nodded and readied their weapons, signaling for Issei to kick the door open. And he did, but they were met with something they didn't anticipate. Even Issei's eyes widened in shock. A Cerberus was there along with 3 squads of guards. Shit, just my luck, a fucking Cerberus, Issei thought. It cannot match you now, Issei, no need to worry, Dragon commented. Issei, it's time for you to use some of my power. You need to make a mark on the world so Hades realizes he can't come for you. Show them the power of annihilation, Bahamut shouted in pride. Okay then, thought Issei with a grin. Okay guys, you take care of the guards and I'll take care of that Cerberus, Issei said to his group. Got it, responded the 3 of them before going to work on the guards. Issei turned to the 3-headed guard dog and smiled. Well, Mutt, I hope you have said your goodbyes, cause you're going to die here tonight, shouted Issei. That's when a faint glow of gray mixed with red started to cover his entire right arm. Armageddon's descent, shouted Issei as he summoned his second sacred gear. He saw Cerberus rear its head back as if it was going to charge at him. Issei smirked at this. So how do I use this, Bahamut? Issei asked, confused as he stared at his arm. The first ability should be easy enough to use, Sphere of Annihilation. To use it, concentrate the energy around you and compress it into a sphere, then throw it at that dog to kill it, Bahamut instructed. So Issei closed his eyes and concentrated hard on the center of his palm. He felt the tremendous pressure building on it. Everyone else could feel it too, based on the looks of fear on the guards and awe with his group. He opened his eyes to see a sphere of pure energy about the size of a softball in his hand. It looked similar to Surzech's Ruin the Extinct, but it was mixed with gray and red with pure black lightning crackling off of it. Its power far outclassed the power of Surzech's Ruin the Extinct. Even Issei could feel its volatile power. That is it, pure energy formed into a destructive ball, extremely powerful, easily enough to annihilate that dog, Bahamut spoke, impressed. So that is the power of a dragon god. I've heard stories of the insane power they hold in their hands, truly a nightmare to witness it firsthand, muttered Dragon in awe and a bit of fear. Take this, you mutt, shouted Issei as he chucked it at the Cerberus. The sphere flew fast at the Cerberus. It didn't have a chance at all. As soon as it hit the Cerberus, the sphere expanded by at least 10 feet, completely covering the Cerberus in the sphere of annihilation. Then there were roars of agony from inside the sphere as it started to crackle with even more lightning. Soon after a few minutes, it started to dissolve, leaving nothing at all left of the Cerberus, not a single ash. It was completely annihilated. Jesus fucking Christ, what the hell was that, Issei? Shouted Donasik. Bahamut called it the Sphere of Annihilation, fitting name I guess, Issei responded after his own shock was gone. He looked around to find most of the guards dead or unconscious, while some had ran for their lives after seeing Issei's new power. Well, whatever that was, next time warn us before you use it, that power, Calorner spoke. Well, I guess that's the power of a dragon god, muttered Issei. Come on guys, Issei saved us from fighting that dog, so don't worry, we will be fine, Rainier spoke while grabbing Issei and embracing him. He had to force a blush down as he felt her breasts push up against him. Come on guys, let's get to why we're here, spoke Issei as he walked to the door that was guarded by the Cerberus. With one fast motion, Issei kicked the door open, blowing it off its hinges completely. Everyone was in awe of what they saw. The Well of Souls was truly a wonder to behold, swirling in a light blue color mixed with purple. They could see faint wisps of energy rise of the surface and go into the air. It definitely was something else. The power it gave off alone was astonishing. This is it, Issei spoke in complete awe. No doubt, Calorner agreed. Well, what are we waiting for? Donasik groaned. Very well, let's go, Issei spoke as the group went down the stairs and stood before the well. Remember, regroup at the church and stay hidden, Issei spoke. They all gave a nod to him as they all walked to the edge. They all gave a look to Issei as if needed his approval. He nodded and all four of them jumped in at once, returning to the world of the living once more. Chapter 5, The Return. Complete harem list. Yes, Rainier, Calorner, Tiamat, Kuroka, Irina, Femvali, Offis, Yasaka, Cades, Murayama, Penemu. No Aquino, Rias, Sona, Serafal, Grafia, Gabriel, Ubaluna, Kiom, Kaniko, Mitalt, Ravel. The first thing Issei noticed when he opened his eyes was that he was in a dense forest, trees everywhere that he could see. He had no clue as to where he was, but something was off. Either he was somewhere where the climate was different or more time had passed than he originally thought. It was cold. Freezing cold to be exact. So I'm back, huh? Bahamut, is there some sort of time difference between the two realms? Issei asked, confused. Yes, you are back in the world of the living, Issei, and yes, there is a difference. In the land of the dead, time is slowed down, so while you were in there for a week or so, 3 or more weeks have passed in here, Bahamut explained. Okay then, this is good. They think I'm gone for good, ha, guess again, Issei thought with a chuckle and a clenched fist. You're right, partner, this is the perfect opportunity to work behind the scenes, but first we need to get the group back together, Dragon commented. You're right, now to find out where we are, Issei thought as he got off the ground. As soon as he got up, he felt soreness like he never did before. He groaned while stretching his arms and legs. Damn, you weren't kidding when you said my body would have to adapt to the world once I got back, Issei thought while stretching. What do you expect? You've been dead for 3 weeks, of course you're gonna be sore, Bahamut retorted. Suck it up, partner, I know you're not a weakling. You've faced far more dangerous foes than just common soreness, Dragon laughed. Whatever, you overgrown lizards, Issei huffed. Okay, we need to find where we are. Too bad all I can see is trees. Gonna have to fly, Issei thought as he was trying to piece the puzzle together. Looks like there's no choice but to fly up and survey your surroundings, Dragon commented. Issei released his wings and was surprised at what they looked like. The skin was blood red while trimmings and appendages were a sleek gray. He decided to flap his wings a bit to get used to them since he always had devil wings instead of dragon ones. He was in awe of what his wings looked like. Grinning to himself, he crouched on the ground and flew straight up into the air. Scene break. Abandoned church. Currently in the abandoned church where the group is supposed to meet up, the 3 fallen angels are sitting upstairs while waiting for Issei to arrive. Soon a conversation started to brew between them. So we're really back, huh? Donasik asked sarcastically. Yeah, I know what you're feeling. It's surreal to be back here after being dead for quite some time, Rainier commented. And we owe it to Issei, Calorner commented. Yeah, now that he's back and with his new power, he will carve a path annihilating anyone foolish to get in his way. Donasik chuckled at how this would play out. No doubt, but to make dragons superior and have a faction, I don't see that happening just yet. He certainly has priorities that need taken care of first. Rainier spoke. No doubt he's not gonna be one to charge head-on first without a plan. He's too smart for that, Calawarner added. And he has the power to back all that up too as well. Many people will know what it means to be truly terrified, Donasik said. That power he has, sphere of annihilation, truly a devastating attack, Rainier added. Yes, no doubt the energy it had was godlike, Calawarner spoke. So what do we do for now? Donasik asked. Well, first we wait for him to get back wherever he is. He will be here soon. We have to stay hidden too. If we were found out without him here, we would be dead, Rainier replied. They all agreed on that, and so they waited for Issei to meet them at the church. Scene break unknown. As Issei flew up, he couldn't see anything really at all, just trees as far as he could see. He assumed he was in a big forest with all the green he saw. He couldn't see any landmarks or anything that could point him in the right direction. He came up with a risky idea that if went wrong could spell trouble before he could get anything done, so he flew to a clearing he saw and sat down and started to meditate. As he started to leak his aura, he simultaneously searched for anyone that would happen to be in the area. He found quite a number of them, but they were quite off in the distance. So he got up and quickly flew to the area where he sensed the presences. He needed to leave the area quickly since he released quite the amount of his power. Anyone in the area would sense it and come to investigate. He did not need anyone to know that he was alive along with his new group. Eventually, after about 15 minutes of flying, he came across a shrine on a hill with some workers attending it. The shrine looked familiar to him. It was the one that Aquino used as a house before moving into the Hyoudou residence. HMPH looks like they rebuilt it, so I was near Kuo, but still off in the distance, well timed to head to the church, Issei thought as he tucked his wings away and suppressed his aura. He snuck around the edge of the shrine to avoid any attention that he didn't need right now, and proceeded to walk on the sidewalk, trying not to act suspicious to arouse any unwanted attention. He started towards the abandoned church. He started thinking more and more about his plan. He needed allies, powerful ones that can hold their own against someone like Azazel or Surzech if needed. That's when he thought of the perfect first addition to his new group. Tiamat the Chaos Karma Dragon King. Partner, are you sure you want to go for her first? You may not like it since you're my host, Dragon commented. Why does she hate you? Issei asked. I may have promised her children before I got sealed away, so naturally she will hate you since you're my host, Dragon explained. Well, whatever, she can hate me if she wants, I'll make her submit, Issei thought with a grin. Like a true dragon, Bahamut laughed. Just don't complain when she's pouncing on you trying to fuck your brains out, Dragon snorted. You think I don't know that? I've dealt with that since the bastard's devils tried to seduce me. I expect Rainier and Calawarner to make a move on me eventually, Issei retorted. For now, let's focus on getting the plan in motion, Bahamut commented. Tiamat lives in the familiar forest, so I will need to find a way there without causing too much suspicion, but for now need to get to the church, Issei thought. So he started walking towards the church while thinking of what to do along the way. Soon after a while of walking, he came to a stop as he found himself on a familiar street, the one where his old house was. He quickly suppressed his aura even more to avoid detection as he walked slowly, trying to not attract attention, so his old house came into view. He sneered as he looked at it, obvious to him that they were still there. He had to fight the urge to burn everyone and everything in it to the ground. That is until Dragon stepped in to placate his host. Partner, calm down, you need to focus. You don't want to make a bad move this early in the game. Don't worry, they will get what's coming to them tenfold, Dragon said, trying to calm Issei down. Dragon is right, Issei. I may be a dragon that only knew annihilation when I was young, but I'm not an idiot. You will get your vengeance soon enough, and everyone will know who you are and why you aren't to be taken lightly, Bahamut added. A growl escaped Issei's lips as he took one last look at his old house, and with a passion stronger than ever he made a promise that they would pay. He would make sure they did. So he decided to not go against his judgment and walked away and started back towards the church. He arrived at the base of the hill where the church resided. He cautiously looked to his surroundings to see if anyone was nearby. Once he found no one, he continued on his way. He stopped before the church just to take another look. He couldn't feel anyone in the area, so either they abandoned him, which if they did he would slaughter them, they might not haven't arrived yet, or they are suppressing their aura to avoid detection. He slowly crept up on the entrance listening for any signs of movement within the church. Still no signs yet. He took a deep breath before slightly opening the door. He stepped in slightly trying to get a view of the place. "Anyone here?" Issei asked cautiously. That's when he felt it, the holy energy spike. He quickly dodged a light spear thrown at him. He didn't feel any killing intent, so it seemed like it was a joke, like someone was playing with him. "Come on out, guys," Issei huffed. "You got us, Issei. Nice reflexes," Donosik said as he stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't surprised that Donosik would play around like that. What surprised him was the bone-crushing hug he was soon enveloped in by Rainier and Calawarner. "Issei, you're finally here," screeched Rainier while hugging him. "What took you so long?" Calawarner asked confused. "I guess when I ejected my pieces, they teleported my body to a random spot to avoid dealing with the mess. I woke up in a forest of the edge of Kyoto," Issei explained. "So have you guys been found out at all? Anyone come near the church?" Issei asked curiously. "Not yet. We hid our presences so no one would detect it," Rainier answered. "Okay then, first things first, while I still have a few days to spare before the transformation starts, we're gonna go to work on setting up our group," Issei said. "How do you mean?" Donosik asked. "Well, we need a place to stay that can hold a good number of people. I have a few ideas, but I want to hold off on those until I got a good idea of what to expect. Donosik and Calawarner, you two are in charge of getting a temporary place to stay, while me and Rainier are going to do some recon and see what has changed since I was gone. Remember, stay hidden. Don't let the devils know you're back," Issei said. "Got it, Issei," Donosik said. "We'll take care of it," Calawarner added. "What are we doing?" Rainier asked curiously. Everyone else wanted to know too. "We're going to stop by the orc room since the school should be over since it's almost night time. I need some information about something," Issei answered. "What is it?" Calawarner asked. "I need a way into the familiar forest," Issei replied. Everyone was shocked. They didn't know why he wanted to go there since he was no longer a devil. "Why the familiar forest? You aren't a devil, so you can't get a familiar," Donosik asked confused. "I'm not going there for a familiar. I'm going to recruit Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon," Issei answered. Everyone was completely shocked due to the fact everyone knew that name. Who didn't? One of the Dragon Kings Issei aimed to recruit. "Are you serious?" Calawarner spoke fearful. "Yes, I am. Don't worry, I'm stronger than most dragons, so I'm going to have to make her submit in a battle. We'll be fine. Remember, I'm building a dragon faction," Issei replied. "All right, you do have a point," Donosik added. "You two focus on finding somewhere to stay. Rainier, come on, we're heading out," Issei said as he started towards the door. Rainier followed suit with him, while Calawarner and Donosik stayed behind thinking about how to get a place to stay. Scene break, Kyoto Academy. Currently, Issei and Rainier find themselves outside the gate of Kyoto Academy. They were preparing to sneak into the orc room. "You ready?" Issei asked Rainier. "Of course I'm ready, let's go," Rainier responded with a grin. Soon both of them walked through the gate and headed towards the orc room. Like Issei thought everyone was gone since it was after school, he looked around to see if anyone was near that had stayed after school. After not seeing anyone, he walked towards the door of the orc room. "It's locked," Issei huffed. "Let me take care of it," Rainier spoke while walking up the door then crouching. She was picking the lock. "Of course you know how to pick a lock," Issei laughed. "Of course, what do you expect? I am a fallen angel," Rainier retorted. Soon the door was open and they stepped inside, closing the door behind them. they came into the main room. "What exactly are we looking for?" asked Rainier curiously as she walked over towards Ria's desk. "Anything information we can use to get to the familiar forest, maybe a stray devil list or something like that, basically a way to find a devil that can tell us how to get there," Issei replied. After about 10 minutes of searching the room, Rainier came across something that could help them, but it was risky. "Hey Issei, I might have found something," Rainier said, motioning him to come take a look. "What is it?" Issei replied as he walked over. He walked over to see Rainier looking at some type of event board, probably one for the club to fake what they really did, but there was a few entries that didn't really fit. "A party," Issei muttered while thinking. "According to the list, it says party at the family estate," Rainier commented. "Oh, well, that is weird," Issei muttered. "Do you think it's something else?" Rainier asked. "Most likely, Wait, something about the young devils gathering Rias mentioned a while back before I left. I think the houses are meeting for a raiding game between Sona and Rias. This is perfect, just the right time to make my return public, along with getting a free ticket straight to the familiar forest. Surzets will be there too, This will be fun," Issei replied with a grin. "Just you wait, you bastards, it's almost your time," Issei thought with a shit-eating grin. Chapter 6, Party Crashing. At the abandoned church, the four of them made a little living space downstairs after they cleaned it up. It was still temporary as Donasik and Calwarner didn't manage to secure a new place to start their group officially. They were currently discussing the plan to crash the young devils gathering. Some were skeptical at the idea of barging in, a whole building filled with high-class devils, but Issei didn't mind. He said that anyone who dared to step in his way would be disintegrated. "So when are we going?" asked Donasik. "Rias and the group haven't left the school yet, so in a day or two we will use that time to get prepared. Make no mistake, there will be enemies, so you will need to be prepared to take on some. I will handle the ones that are too powerful for you. My main objective is to make an example out of Surzets, so that everyone knows that if they step in my way, then I will not hesitate to kill them. I'm not going to kill Surzets, no, that would be too easy of punishment. I got a better idea. Maybe I rip his wings out. What's a devil without his wings?" Issei explained. "Well, whatever you do to him, make sure you leave a mark. You need to make them know they can't mess with you," Donasik commented. "Yep, I got that down," Issei responded. "So what about the dragon faction? How are you going to turn people into dragons?" Calwarner asked. "I'll ask Bahamut real quick. It could be useful to know before we leave. You guys would be the first ones to do the transformations. It would make you incredibly stronger," Issei responded. "Bahamut, how would I turn these three into dragons?" Issei asked curiously. "Dragon's essence, every dragon has it. It is what they were before they were born," Bahamut explained. What do you mean exactly?" Issei asked, confused. "Dragons are actually masses of energy that go into a state similar to metamorphosis. Every dragon has its own unique essence that decides what type it is and how powerful it can become," Bahamut explained. "Okay, then how do I get dragon's essence?" Issei asked, once again confused. "Normally you couldn't get it, only God-class beings have the power to extract own essence and use it, but since you have Bahamut now, he can do it for you," D-Drake added. "Alright, he told me how to do it. It's called dragon's essence. I guess it's what dragons are actually made of before they are born," Issei explained. "So are we going to become dragons?" Rainier asked curiously. "Yup, this is a dragon faction after all," Issei responded. "Okay, then let's do it," Calwarner spoke. "Bahamut, how do I turn them?" Issei asked curiously. "Just hold out your right hand and I'll do the rest," Bahamut spoke. Issei then held out his right hand. Soon there was a pale glow around his whole arm as it started to grow. Soon it all condensed into 3 small spheres of pure energy, but these were different. He could tell it was pure life force. "Just place 1 sphere on each of their hands and they will absorb it. The transformation takes about 7 hours for the body to accept the new life force and replace the old one. They will pass out for most of the duration. After they awake, they will be part dragon," Bahamut explained. They all looked to each other a few times, and after a few minutes of their own thinking, they all nodded their heads. They were ready. He then placed 1 sphere on Rainier's hands to test it. As soon as it touched her skin, it was instantly absorbed. She then gained a gray-pale glow around her. How do you feel? Issei asked. Like an adrenaline rush, but stronger and more potent, Rainier replied. Soon the pale glow intensified as her eyes started to dim in and out like she was losing a battle to sleep. Soon she collapsed but was caught by Issei, who proceeded to place her on the makeshift bed. He then looked to the two others. You guys ready? Issei asked. They nodded their heads and he placed a sphere on each of their hands. It was absorbed as fast as Rainier's was. The pale glow followed after it, and they admitted to the same feeling Rainier had, and soon they followed suit and passed out like her. After he had did that, Issei soon felt exhausted, but he didn't know why. Bahamut, why am I so tired after using the dragon's essence? Issei asked, confused. Because I used your life force to make the dragon's essence. Don't worry, nothing fatal will come because of it, just sleep it off, Bahamut explained. Issei sighed as he felt the tiredness creep into his body. Laying himself down on the bed next to Rainier, he embraced her and snuggled in and soon fell asleep. He needed to be ready for when they revealed themselves at the young devil's gathering. A few hours later, Issei suddenly awoke and sat up, rubbing his eyes, trying to get the sleepiness out of his system. He looked over to the three fallen angels to see they were still passed out, but he could tell the transformation was almost done. He could smell it on them, and their breathing was steady enough for him to know they were fine. He got up and stretched. He figured he had about an hour or two before they woke up, so he decided to take a walk outside. As he walked around outside, he remembered all the times he had here with his old friends. He sneered at how he was blatantly tricked and deceived without even seeing through it. He started asking himself if he regretted the way he went out. Without a doubt he didn't. It only made his resolve stronger than before to make sure they pay for what they did. As he walked along the sidewalk, he passed the Kyoto Academy gates. He failed to notice two girls looking at him with extreme shock, specifically Kadace and Murayama. They looked at each other with astonished looks. The school was already over for the day, but he was gone for a month. A conversation started to brew between them. Is that Hyoudou? Murayama asked her friend next to her. I think so, but he looks different, but I can't put my finger on it, Kadace responded. They didn't even know what to think, so they did the natural and went after him since their kendo practice was already over and they were on their way home, so they chased after him. Hey Hyoudou, Murayama shouted to get his attention. That spooked Issei hugely. What the fuck, Issei thought cautiously. He was deciding to tail it as fast as he could or turn around and see who it was who called his name. He slowly turned around to see the two kendo girls walking towards him. He cursed inwards at how they were the ones to find him first. Yes, Issei asked curiously. Where the hell have you been? 4 weeks you've disappeared and now you just suddenly pop up. Did you and the orc have an argument or something? They are acting like you didn't even exist, Kadace asked. Issei just scoffed at that. Yeah, something like that, Issei responded uninterested. Well, what do you expect? You should have known they didn't really like you. You are a pervert, a obsessive one at that, Kadace responded back him. That ticked him off big time. Listen, don't judge me just because I happen to enjoy the female body. Don't talk like you know me. I'm not a crazy-ass pervert like you think I am. I happen to already have 2 girlfriends with me that actually care for me, unlike that backstabbing band of bastards you call the Orc Club. Issei shouted in fury. Both of them were shocked beyond belief. They didn't know what to say. It was evident they were crossing lines. So if you nothing else to say, I have to go and take care of some errands, Issei spoke before leaving. The two just stood there, mouth agape, thinking about what they did. That's when they both noticed something odd about Issei. Did you see his eyes? Kadace asked. Yeah, they were like a reptilian's, Murayama responded. They both didn't know what it meant, but nonetheless they witnessed it, and they actually would know what it all meant and why he was the way he was sooner than later. Issei was beyond furious. He could barely contain it anymore. He quickly teleported to some deserted area to vent out his frustration. He needed to so he could keep a cool head on his shoulders when his group went to the underworld. He looked over to see a mountain. He then roared as loud as he could, shouting out all his fury in one wrathful cry of anger. All around him the ground started to shake as huge earthquakes started to form from the epicenter. A crater started to form underneath him as the pressure increased wildly. Soon he released all his pent-up rage in one huge sphere of annihilation, throwing it at the mountain quickly as he could. He watched it hit the mass of rock as it started to shake and crumble until there was nothing left of it. After it was all over, he was breathing in and out deeply. He realized he made quite the show of power, and soon the supernatural world would be here to investigate, so he quickly left the area, teleporting back to the church. He sighed to himself as he walked inside. Walking downstairs to where everyone else was resting, he arrived to see Rainier starting to awaken from her sleep. She sat up slowly and started rubbing her eyes and stretching. "How are you feeling?" Issei asked. "Super sore, like most of my joints and sockets have been dislocated and put back in it again," Rainier responded while stretching. "What's the matter with you? I can tell something happened by your expression," Rainier asked curiously. "I met some of my old schoolmates while I was walking around an hour or two ago. They don't really like me, so I kinda got frustrated about some of the stuff they said," Issei explained after sighing. "What did they say about you?" Rainier asked. "Well, before I was turned into a devil, they didn't like me because of the peeking I did on them, but I had my reasons, and now after a month of disappearing they think they know me so well. It was just annoying the way they were judging me," Issei explained. "Well, whatever they said about you, it's not true. You have definitely changed. You're not the same Issei Hyoudou anymore. You're reborn anew," Rainier said sincerely. Issei did something unexpected after that. He felt something stirring in his gut, and he launched forward, bringing Rainier in a tight embrace. He didn't know what caused the sudden action, but he wasn't complaining. It surely shocked Rainier, but she didn't mind. She quickly embraced him back. He didn't mind it at all. It actually helped him a lot with his worries, but something else was about to happen that would change both of them, and there would be no going back whatsoever. Suddenly, Rainier raised her head and quickly and forced her mouth into Issei's, his eyes widening to the size of saucers. He was beyond astonished, but nonetheless his eyes closed as he reciprocated her feelings. They continued uninterrupted for about 5 minutes until a forced cough was heard near them. Issei and Rainier quickly separated and looked to see Calawarner with a sly smile and Donaseek with a smirk. "Anything we missed?" Calawarner said coyly. "Don't butt in, Calawarner," Rainier said back to her. "You won't be able to keep him for yourself forever," Calawarner said. That's when she walked up to Issei while swaying her hips provocatively, and kissed Issei with ferocity. Of course, Issei was shocked once again. Before wrapping his arms around her back, she quickly pulled away and looked at Rainier with a smug smile. "Oh boy, here we go," Issei thought as he knew there was going to be a fight. "Hukuku, partner, what did I tell you? 2 new girls in your harem," D-Drake chuckled at the scene before him. "Dragon's blood for you, boy," Bahamut chuckled. "Okay, enough. We need to be ready for tomorrow. We will deal with this later. Today is a free day. Get some rest for tomorrow. By the way, how do you two feel?" Issei asked Calawarner and Donaseek. "Sore as fuck," Donaseek replied dryly. "Sore too, but I feel like my senses have been made stronger for the most part," Calawarner added. "Okay, you guys should have a partial dragon form now. It's basically like changing between your fallen forms," Issei said. The 3 of them looked to each other real quick, and soon each of them gained crimson scales and razor-sharp claws and dragon wings that replaced their fallen wings. "Cool," Rainier shouted before reverting back to normal form. "Awesome," Donaseek muttered while looking at his claws. "Pretty cool," Calawarner added. Soon everyone did their own thing for the rest of the day as they prepared for the plan tomorrow. Scene break, morning. It was the morning they were going to make their group known throughout the 3 factions. We currently find Issei looking out the window with a serious face as he waiting for the others to get up. Soon everyone was up and ready. Issei turned to them to make sure they were truly ready for what was about to take place. "Are you guys ready? Once we step through the circle, there is no going back," Issei asked. "Of course, let's beat the shit out of some devils," Donaseek grinned. "Of course, let's go," Rainier shouted. "Of course, let's do this," Calawarner smiled. "Okay then," Issei replied. As they walked out of the church that morning, they knew nothing would stop them, as they would defeat anyone in their way. As they stood outside, they waited for Issei to finish the coordinates of the circle. The plan was to teleport to a nearby mountain by the Mrbabybornree estate. Soon the circle was ready. He looked to the three of them once again. They all gave him a nod, and they walked in it. Scene break, underworld. As they stepped out of the circle, they encountered something that they didn't expect. Even Issei was stumped at what was going on. A barrier, Issei muttered in confusion. Someone else attacking, Calwarner commented. Chaos Brigade probably, Issei replied. The three fallen didn't know who that was. Who? Donasik asked, confused. I forgot you guys haven't heard of them, since they appeared a while after you guys died. They're a terrorist organization made out of the several groups. The Hero faction and the Old Satan faction are the most known group in it. No doubt there's more. Their group is led by Afes, the Ouroboros Dragon God. She wants to defeat Great Red. While most of them just want world domination, you've got guys like Shalba Beelzebub, Cao, Rias Vimliva, and Lucifer. The White Dragon Empress actually went to their side just for fighting. She was always a battle maniac, Issei explained to them. The group is shocked that there was a group like that going around doing what they wanted. They sound horrible, Calwarner said. No doubt, Rainier said with narrowed eyes. This is perfect, two groups to fighting against each other, and we interrupt both of them and make quite the scene, making both of them fear us and know who we are, what we aim for, Issei spoke. The three of them was astonished at his quick thinking in a situation. He was truly a good planner. Pretty good way to kill two birds with one stone, Donasik said. Good thing I brought masks to hide our faces. Here, put these on and don't take them off until I tell you. Can't wait to see the looks on their faces when they see a ghost, Issei said as he handed out three dark-looking masks that covered the whole face. Good idea, can't have them knowing who we are just yet, Calwarner said. All right, that's fine, Donasik said as he put his mask on. Rainier and Calwarner both took one and put them on. Issei then put his on and took a look at what was happening down below at the estate. He could make out two main groups, Rias and her peerage against Diodora Astaroth and Shalba Beelzebub. He saw what appeared to be Azazel and Surzech facing off against some people he didn't recognize, probably more Chaos Brigade leaders. Okay, let's get down there, Issei said. And they descended down the mountain, following behind Issei as he continued on towards the estate. He eventually came to a stop as he encountered the barrier. It's a decently made barrier, definitely made out of Afes' power, no doubt, but nothing I can't handle, muttered Issei. Stand back, I'm gonna release quite the amount of power on this barrier to shatter it, Issei said to his group. They nodded as they took a couple steps back and watched as Issei suddenly floated up in the air above them. He then charged a huge sphere of annihilation. It was the size of a boulder. He then chucked it at the center of the barrier. Everyone felt the enormous amount of power that was packed densely into it. Scene break with Surzech and Azazel. As both Azazel and Surzech, along with the people they were currently fighting, struggled to get up off the ground of the insane amount of power, they looked up to see the barrier shattered like it was nothing. What the hell was that? Surzech shouted, fearful. That wasn't us. That barrier was made out of Afes' power. Someone new just entered the area with a crazy amount of power, one of the Chaos Brigade leaders said fearfully. Azazel looked like he was about to tail it to the edge of the underworld to hide from whoever had that amount of power. Surzech looked severely scared for his family. Someone that is more powerful than Afes, Great Red, no way he can't be here, we would have sensed him, Azazel muttered. Ha, whoever it is, we are going to have them join Chaos Brigade, shouted the man. I highly doubt that. Whatever reason they are here isn't for you. They want something from the devils, so they came here personally, Azazel responded. Scene break with Rias group. Ara, such devastating power, Rias muttered fearfully. PFFF, not that bad, I could take him, Shalba Beelzebub said arrogantly. The group that was currently there forgot about what he just did. Asia Argento had been sent to some place they didn't know. How can you say that? Aquino asked incredulously. I have Afes' power within my hand. I could take him easily, mocked Shalba, unaware of the current situation. Are you so sure? Asked a new female voice. The group turned to suddenly see Volley with Asia in her hands, with Biku and Arthur behind her. Volley, Asia, Rias said softly. We found her in the dimensional gap, but that power spike brought us here, Volley said before dropping Asia in Akino's arms. Now Shalba, are you so certain you can take on someone like that? Volley asked while narrowing her eyes. Of course, shouted Shalba. She just sighed, but something piqued her interest about the power spike. It was familiar. That was when Albion's wings manifested on its own. Volley, do not antagonize that person with that power, Albion said aloud. Everyone was shocked at the heavenly dragon Albion making his presence known. Why? Volley asked curiously. You sense it, right? Albion said. What do you sense, Volley? Rias asked curiously. That's when she felt it, the strange feeling that was associated with him, the Red One. Gremory heiress, it is common knowledge that Issei Hyoudou is dead, right? Volley asked. Yes, he didn't want to be in the peerage anymore, and he died when the pieces were ejected. Rias lied with a smirk. Everyone else in her group had that same arrogant smirk plastered on their faces. Then you're an idiot if you think he is truly dead, Volley said. What do you mean? Rias asked cautiously. That person that used that power, they have the scent of the Welsh dragon mixed with another being, Volley said. Their eyes all widened. They suddenly felt the coldest chill they ever felt go down their spines. Was he back to finish what he started? If so, how? No, it can't be, Akino said. Impossible how? Kiba asked incredulously. Listen well, devils, if he has any resentment towards you, you are as good as dead. If that being I'm sensing is the one I think it is, he now stands above Great Red and Off Eyes, Albion said cryptically. Everyone now was completely astonished and even fearful a little bit. Even Volley, the battle maniac, didn't know what to say. What do you mean? Rias asked fearful. Long ago there was another dragon that insanely powerful, so powerful even Great Red was defeated without a sweat. This dragon disappeared long before the Great War. His name is Bahamut, the Annihilation Dragon God. If he has granted Issei his power, Issei is now a dragon god, Albion said. Shalba looked like he shit his pants. He thought he could take on that. He started to back away slowly. The rest of Ria's group were scared shitless. They had a reason to be too. Volley was completely silent. No words could be uttered. She was about to speak, but suddenly the wall was blown to smithereens, leaving a gaping hole, revealing 4 masked figures. No one dared to move. Volley was now certain as she could feel the red dragon's presence. But who were those with him? Darling, I think you broke them, Rainier said under her mask. That's when Azazel and Surzech came into the room with everyone else. They didn't know what the others knew, so they were completely in the dark. Honey, can we get on with the show already? Calawarner said. What was about to happen would shock everyone, mostly Azazel. Honey, you bitch, Issei-kun is mine, Calawarner, shouted Rainier at her. You got to learn to share, Rainier, Donasik added. Exactly, Rainier, you can't have him to yourself all the time, Calawarner commented. Everyone was astonished. Wasn't the fallen angels dead? How were they alive, and why was he with them? Well, look what the garbage brought in, Issei said after removing his mask. He signaled for everyone else to remove their masks, revealing Calawarner, Rainier, and Donasik behind him. No one dared to move. What? Nothing to say? No hello, Issei? No sorry we fucking stabbed you in the back like a bunch of self-centered assholes? Guess not, Issei laughed. What do you want? Surzech asked while gritting his teeth. And what do I want? Issei muttered. Time for the show, boys and girls, Issei shouted. They had no idea what he meant by that. One, I'm here to teach you a lesson, Surzech. Personally, you're an example to what happens now if you get in my way, Issei said. Surzech and Azazel just bawled out laughing. They truly didn't know anything. Oh, and how do you suppose you can do that? You can't defeat me, I'm a devil king, Surzech said arrogantly. Azazel just looked amused at the fallen angels. Everyone else just started to slowly back up away from a one-sided fight. Before anyone knew it, Issei had his right fist in Surzech's gut, piercing his whole stomach. He looked up to Issei with wide eyes. "How?" Surzech asked, fearful. "Albion had it right," Issei said. "That sealed the deal. There was no going back. They knew they would pay tenfold." "What do you mean?" Azazel said. "Bahamut," was all Issei said. Azazel's eyes widened along with Surzech's. Everyone that had a high position knew of the Annihilation Dragon God whose only purpose was to destroy. "Impossible, you are lying," Azazel said. "Want me to prove it?" mocked Issei. Before anyone else could say anything, the Armageddon's descent manifested on his right arm. Bahamut then spoke to everyone in the room with a voice that commanded power. "You believe him now. You all have angered my host beyond belief. It is time for you punishment. The three factions are no longer at the top of the list. I hereby state that the dragons will rise once again to the top. He will be the one to bring dragons back to the rightful status. The three fallen have already been turned into dragons. The dragon faction will be reborn anew," Bahamut said aloud, commanding anyone in near area to listen to its commanding presence. Everyone was completely shocked beyond belief. He was back for good, and he had a goal that would be the near end of the three factions. They just hoped it would be over soon. "Now back to business, Surzech, your wings or your life?" Issei asked. No one said a word or dared to try to attack him. Surzech just looked like he was seeing the personification of death itself. "What?" Surzech asked fearfully. "Fine, you don't want to cooperate, then your wings will be ripped out one by one until they are all gone," shouted Issei. The gruesome scene that played out before them made them piss themselves as Issei brutally pulled Surzech's wings out one by one, leaving nothing left but a broken man on the floor, bloody. "Now on to the next piece of business." He looked to Rias, who started to flee. But he was faster. He appeared right in front of her. "Don't think you're gonna get away, you bitch," snarled Issei. "Now open a magic circle to the familiar forest or else," shouted Issei. Everyone still didn't make any movements. They didn't know what to do. She quickly stumbled back as she prepared the circle. Everyone else was truly frightened. Soon the circle was complete as it lit up with its coordinates. He walked towards it and his group followed. He looked to the others in the room with a cold glare, warning anyone to get in his way and they would pay the ultimate price. Before he fully stepped into the circle, he looked to Azazel, whose sweat dropped profusely. "You're next, Azazel," Issei said before he and his group teleported to their destination, leaving a whole shaken-up family of devils. Chapter 7: New Recruit. As the trio entered the familiar forest, they were met with what they were expecting. A forest with familiars as far as their eyes could see. Now they just needed to find out where the Chaos Karma Dragon resided. They were quickly ripped away abruptly from their thoughts when a new voice spoke above them. "Who are you and why are you here?" It was a male voice. The three of them turned around to see a man in a white tank top with a yellow double-strap backpack on his back. He had a hat with red hair poking out of the front as well. This was Zataoji, the familiar master. "We have no quarrel with you, familiar master. We are only here to recruit the Chaos Karma Dragon Tiamat," Issei spoke aloud. Zataoji got a shocked expression real fast. In his mind, he didn't think anyone would be foolish to recruit the Dragon King Tiamat. Most of the people who tried before to get her as a familiar were turned to ash if they couldn't handle their own against her in a fight. "Who are you to be so foolish enough to dare trying to recruit the Dragon King?" Zataoji asked cautiously. "That is for me to know and for you to find out. Just point use in the direction in which she resides. I don't want to have to force it out of you," Issei said. And he raised his energy a little bit to prove his point. Seeing the sweat drop on the familiar master's head made Issei smirk. The tactic of intimidation could work wonders on the right people. "Very well, just try to keep the destruction to a minimum. You'll find her in a cave at the edge of the forest in that direction," Zataoji said while pointing. "Thank you, we will be quick and leave," Issei said respectfully. And so the three of them walked off in the direction they were told to go. Soon a conversation started to brew between them. "When the fight starts, which it will because dragons are a race of pride, she will not easily submit to me. You three better stay on the sidelines since there will be a lot of power being thrown around." A dragon king versus a dragon god will cause a lot of damage to the nearby areas. Issei spoke. Right, Donasik replied. What about our living arrangements? Once we get her on her side, I doubt she will like the idea of living in an abandoned church that well, Calawarner added. You're right, Calawarner, she will not like it very well, Rainier added. You guys are right, so that's why I'm going to ask someone to help us out, Issei spoke. Who do you have in mind? Rainier asked, confused. You could say she's a friend, well maybe not, but I believe she will help us, Issei replied vaguely. Rainier asked. She was a little jealous since so many girls were about to enter their lives. Yes, there obviously will be a harem, Rainier. You'll need to learn how to share Ray like Calawarner said, Issei replied. Fine, Rainier huffed. So the three continued on in the direction towards their goal. Scene break, Underworld. Far away from where the group currently was, the Underworld was in chaos. News traveled fast of Issei's return, and now the Council of Elders that included 3 of the Great Satans due to Surzech's injuries and the heads of the remaining 33 clans were having a meeting about what they could do. They were arrogant and snotty, thinking they stood a chance of defeating the new dragon god, when in reality he could wipe them off the face of the earth with ease. He needs to be punished, screamed one of the elders. What chance could we possibly have against a monster of that magnitude? If it is true that Bahamut has chosen him, it would be futile to anger him even more. We must approach with caution, shouted another elder. He still needs to be dealt with, shouted back the elder. What do you expect us to do? His power is far outclassed. Surzech's Lucifer was taken down with ease, another elder argued. Silence, shouted a new voice. It was female. This turned out to be none other than Seraphal Leviathan. She was very upset at the news of Issei's return. What you all say is true, though we still must do something to counter him the best we can. The 3 factions are at a time of peace for the better. The Cause Brigade has appeared. We must unite under these conditions to be able to stand a chance. Azazel has locked the Grigori down. Michael and the Seraphs are waiting for Issei to confront them, Seraphal argued. So still his power is tops even Great Red, argued another elder. Ever heard of a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Seraphal said with a grin. Scene break, Grigori. The Grigori was in chaos as well, just as Seraphal had said. Azazel had it completely locked down with guards at every point, no one in or out. Azazel thought he was safe, but he didn't know Issei would plow through all of them like they were cannon fodder. As Azazel sat down in his office, 2 bodyguards at the door, he thought he was safe from Issei's wrath, but boy was he wrong. Suddenly the door burst open with a Grigori soldier coming in with a folder, most likely all the information they could gather about Issei's new abilities. Azazel, sir, here is the information you requested, the soldier said. Thank you, you can return to your post now, Azazel replied. If Bahamut has truly chosen Issei as his next host, along with the boosted gear, he is now a force to be reckoned with, but he was dead. How did he possibly come back to life then? Azazel wondered, confused. Maybe the Well of Souls, Azazel thought. It can't be. Hades is supposed to have it under constant guard with the best of his men, Azazel thought, perplexed. Azazel then called for one of his subordinates to come fast. What do you need, Azazel-sama? The subordinate asked, confused. Make contact with Hades, the god of the dead, and ask him the state of the Well of Souls, Azazel spoke. Yes, sir, the subordinate replied. Soon the subordinate left, and then Azazel turned his attention to a new problem that he was having trouble figuring out. The fallen angels that were with Issei, and how their energy signatures were completely different from regular fallen angels. Could it be possible they underwent a transformation to turn them into dragons? If so, just how powerful could they now be? Azazel thought, confused once again. There were so many questions that he had that were unanswered. He didn't understand most of the things that were currently going on and what their next move would be, but he knew the world would never be the same. Scene break, familiar forest. Issei and his group currently are still on their way towards Tiamat's cave, After about 10 minutes of walking, they finally came across a clearing where they could see a cave carved into the side of the mountain off in the distance. In Issei's mind, there was no doubt that this is where Tiamat resided. "Okay, I believe that cave is it," Issei said. "Fits the description the familiar master gave us, and it looks big enough to hold a dragon," Calawarner added. "Not to mention the lack of familiars in the area, survival of the fittest, show them who's the alpha," Donasik said. "True, most of them got scared and ran and hid," Rainier added. "Here we go," Issei spoke as he walked forward. "I suggest you guys find a place to watch the fight, as it will be good," Issei smirked. So the three of them fell back to watch the fight as Issei continued onwards towards the cave. "Any ideas of what to expect, guys?" Issei asked the dragons in his head. "Even if you are a dragon god, Issei, she's still a dragon king. It will be a real fight. Since you used the sphere of annihilation on the barrier made from Offai's power, you will need to recharge your energy a bit before you can release another one. Energy is not a constant thing in the world. It has and will always be a factor in a fight. Even so, you still won't be completely outclassed," Bahamut explained. "He is right, partner. Energy is a huge factor in a fight. For now, you should be able to get by with the balance breaker," Drake added. "Okay then," Issei thought. "In time, after your transformation into a real dragon god ends, you will be able to handle more without serious repercussions," Bahamut explained. So Issei walked forward with a plan in his head and a goal in mind. He knew it wouldn't be a one-hit knockout fight. No, it would be a true fight. After all, Tiamat wasn't a dragon king for nothing. As he neared towards the entrance of the cave, he stopped for a second to try to sense anyone in the area. The only signatures he could feel were from his group and one signature deep inside of the cave, and it was a powerful and potent one at that. So he went deeper and deeper to find her. As soon as he stepped into the cave, he knew this was the place. He could hear a rumbling sound deeper in the cave, so he trekked onwards deeper into it. Before he could get any deeper, he was suddenly stopped as he felt the pressure increase by a lot quickly. He instinctively put up his guard. He was in fact wandering in a dragon's den without it knowing. He was suddenly brought out of his thoughts abruptly when he heard a deep growl followed by deep female growl. "Who dares to enter my cave?" Tiamat growled angrily. "Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, I presume?" Issei asked with a smirk. "Who are you, boy? Do you have a death wish?" snarled Tiamat. "My name is Issei Hyoudou, and no, I came here for a friendly chat," Issei spoke. Now that annoyed Tiamat greatly. Before Issei knew it, he was hit by a large blue barbed tail, sending him flying out of the cave with Tiamat following him out. The group outside was extremely surprised when they saw Issei flying out of it, head first slamming into the ground. "Issei!" all three of them screamed. Then they were shocked as a huge blue western dragon flew out of the cave and circled over them before hovering. "I suggest you take that idiot and leave before I roast you all to ashes," Tiamat shouted. The three of them were shocked senseless, trembling in fear. They didn't move an inch. They thought Issei was out cold. That is until they heard a chuckle followed by a roar of laughter coming from no other than Issei Hyoudou. "Ha, that was a good one, Tiamat, but now I think it's time for me to get serious," Issei said. "Boy, what chance do you think you possibly could have of winning a fight with me?" Tiamat snarled. "Oh, nothing except a few tricks up my sleeve," Issei quipped back at the dragon. That's when a deafening call was heard across the forest, heeding all in the nearby vicinity to witness its commanding power behind it once and for all. "Boost!" the gauntlet called out. That very command that was echoed throughout the forest sent Tiamat over the edge. Charging forward in fury, she aimed for the host of D-Drag. "DDRAIG!" Tiamat roared in fury. "Jesus, D-Drag, you weren't kidding when you said she hates your guts," Issei thought. "No doubt if you recruit her, she will definitely be trying to bang your brains out," D-Drag snorted. Issei quickly dodged a blue fireball that was thrown fast at him. He looked to the side of him to see the grass burnt to a crisp. "Can't get hit by that fire. Even if I'm a dragon, it will still hurt like a bitch," Issei thought. He then ran under her, forcing her to redirect her attacks. He took this moment to launch a counter-attack. Dragon shot. Punching the ball of energy, he sent the shot hurtling towards the Dragon King, forcing her to dodge quickly as the shot scratched the surface of her wings. "Damn you!" Tiamat roared in fury. And she charged head-on towards Issei, intending on landing a direct blow to him. As she neared him with her claws outstretched aimed directly at him, she slashed and swung at him a few times, but he saw this coming. "Dragon boost 10x and put it all on my legs for a speed boost," Issei spoke in his head. "Right," Dragon replied. "Boost x10. Now that surprised everyone. They knew now he was serious. Even Tiamat halted midair to look at what changed in the boy. She was shocked when he released his wings, and so was his group, due to the fact they had never seen his wings before. But Tiamat was focused on something else about the wings, the colors of it. Even if she was a dragon king, she knew those colors were important. Every dragon had heard of the myths revolving around the Annihilation dragon god donning gray and blood-red wings, which was what Issei's wings were exactly like. She gulped as she got a very bad feeling. "Boost x5. Yup, a very bad feeling indeed." She had big feeling of dread coming on. She knew what it was but didn't want to dare say its name, for no one had more power than that monster of a dragon, and with 2 words uttered by Issei would send her feelings overboard. "Balance break," Issei spoke clear as water for the whole world to hear. "Welsh dragon balance breaker," chanted the gauntlet. As a bright crimson light filled the forest, blinding everyone around it, it began to condense into a sphere of energy swirling around Issei. Glowing with power, everyone could tell this was a huge power-up. Tiamat quickly regretted antagonizing this beast of a dragon. As the light died down, Issei was in his scale mill. But it was different, not the design, but the pressure he was giving off was higher than normal, and his power was increased too. Dragon shot. Tiamat barely missed that shot that was fired. Banking right and diving was the only way she did. As she watched the shot go towards the mountain where her cave was, she feared the worst. As the shot neared the mountain, it continued forwards, showing no signs of stopping or dissipating. Once it struck the mountain, the result was astonishing. One dragon shot took out half the mountain, and with it, Tiamat's cave. She shuddered as she saw the explosion take half the mountain with it. She thought this would be her last day, but something happened that started to change her views. She was confused when Issei dropped out of Balance Breaker. "Tiamat, I do not wish to fight you. There was a reason I came to seek you out," Issei said suddenly. Tiamat didn't think this would happen. She didn't understand what exactly he wanted, but she could tell he was being truthful, so she halted her guard. "Continue," Tiamat said cautiously. "I'm sure you noticed that besides D-Drag and the boosted gear, I have something else, something ancient and powerful. You're a dragon after all," Issei spoke. That's when Tiamat's eyes widened. She didn't dare say his name. If it was true that this boy had him, he could annihilate anyone in his path. Just what did he want? That's what was exactly running through her mind all at once. She dared to speak it though. "Bahamut," she spoke, but it was a whisper laced with grave terror. Her fears were correct when she saw him grin. "I can see your worries. You don't have to fear me. In fact, I want you to join me," Issei said with a smile. "Explain," Tiamat said, shocked. "You were correct when you thought Bahamut. You see, a little while ago I was betrayed by most of the 3 factions that I thought were my friends and loved ones. Long story short, I ended up purging my evil pieces and I died. But Bahamut gave me a second chance, but it came at a cost. To put the dragons back on top and teach the 3 factions a lesson. Essentially, I'm creating a dragon faction. That's why I want you on my side. I'm going to be gathering more dragons from around the world," Issei explained. Tiamat was silent for a good bit, most likely thinking it over. It was better to get on his good side. "Very well, I will join you, Issei Hyoudou," Tiamat said finally. That's when a blue light started glowing around her. Soon the light expanded and covered the whole forest, similar to how Issei's was when he went into his balance breaker. Soon after the light died down, a 6-foot-tall woman took its place. She had sapphire blue hair that flowed beautifully down her shoulders. She had crystal clear ocean-colored eyes. She was wearing a brilliant light blue dress that flowed past her knees. She also had a diamond necklace wrapped around her neck. This was Tiamat in her human form. Even Issei couldn't deny her beauty. Rainier and Calawarner felt a little jealous after seeing the dragon's human form. As Issei stared at her, he felt an endless wave of emotions that he didn't understand. He saw Tiamat smirking as she noticed him eyeing her like a piece of candy. "Like what you see," Tiamat teased him. "Bahamut d-drag, what did I just feel now?" Issei asked the dragons in his head. "You just had a battle with a powerful opponent. Now that she is on your side, your dragon instincts are telling you to make her yours and mate," Bahamut explained. He was amused as well. Issei groaned after hearing this. "What he says is true. It will continue to happen and it will worsen until it is resolved by the only way you can. That is the dragon blood in you calling out. Think of it like a heat phase," D-Drag added. Issei shook his head and decided to cross that bridge when the time came. After all, there were more pressing matters to deal with. "Okay guys, you know what to do now," Issei said to his group. "Yes," replied Donasik. "Fallens turned dragons, huh?" Tiamat mused. "Okay, Tiamat, go with them to our temporary living quarters. I'm going to talk to a friend to help us out with a new place to stay. We just did get back from the afterlife. We took the Well of Souls and returned like a week ago," Issei explained. She only nodded her head and the four of them disappeared in magic circle headed back towards the church, leaving Issei to himself. He then focused on finding the right energy signature he was looking for and he found it. He quickly made a magic circle and stepped through it. As he stepped out, he saw a big white mansion in the clearing of a forest, clearly off the map so no one would bother the residents. Issei started to walk towards the door and finally rung the doorbell after reaching it. The person who opened it was beyond shocked, clearly astonished by his appearance. Issei smirked and spoke. "Volley, we need to talk," Issei said. Chapter 8, A New Location and a Message. The moment she saw him, her eyes were widened to saucers as she looked at her rival. She was clearly not expecting him to show up at all, but here he was a mere foot in front of her. She had no idea what to expect. She could feel his power growing by the moment. She didn't know why too. To her, she could feel the magic power in him build slowly but surely. She composed herself and spoke. "Hyoudou, why are you here?" Volley asked, confused. She was also trembling inside like nothing she ever felt before, due to the fact he could obliterate everyone in her mansion if he wanted to, but something told her that he wasn't here for that. "Volley, we need to talk," Issei responded casually. That surprised her. She didn't feel any lies or malice in his words, so she assumed he was here on friendly business, so she sighed and stepped inside and ushered him in. He walked in normally and took a look around her mansion. He hadn't really had the chance to see it before. He looked around to see Kuroka, Lefei, Biku and Arthur looking at him suspiciously. He understood why they were on edge. No doubt the news of what happened traveled fast. It was only natural that they were a bit scared and on the defense. The moment he entered the room, he sighed and spoke to them. He needed to calm them down before he would explain what he was here for and what it could mean for them. "You guys don't have to worry. I'm not here to harm you guys. Quite the opposite, actually," Issei spoke aloud. Once they heard that, they settled down a little bit, but their nerves were still on edge. They were also confused on the last bit he said. Even Volley raised an eyebrow. She then spoke. "Okay, what do you want?" Volley asked. Issei sighed and sat down on the couch he was standing by. The 5 others in the room sat as well, but their guards were still up. "Okay, first things first, do you guys know the full story?" Issei asked. The 5 of them looked at each other quickly. They weren't expecting him to act like this. He was known as the perverted boy who could be serious about a lot of stuff. But the Issei they were standing in front of was completely different. They wondered what had happened to cause such a change in the boy's personality. And since he asked if they knew the full story, they assumed it was worse than what the devils said. "No, we don't really know the full story. We were told by the princess that you wanted out of the peerage and you died after they ejected them, but I'm gonna guess that was a lie, and it was different from what they said," Volley replied. Issei scoffed and accidentally let his power spike a bit, making Arthur and Biku go on edge while the 3 girls were blushing and panting. Issei saw this and quickly brought his power back down to scale. If it was only that easy, hell no it ain't. The truth is that I was only useful to them for a little while. After I saved that bitch of princess from her arranged marriage and beat Cockabeel, they decided they didn't need me anymore, like I was a tool that was disposed of when it was old. Issei spat. Now the whole group's expressions flipped and went wide-eyed at his words. Now they understood why he was the way he was now. Volley still wondered about his new power. That's when I ejected my pieces and I died. I woke in, you could call it purgatory. Bahamut brought me and gave me a choice to come back, but it came with a cost. The three factions were in need of a reality check, and the dragon faction would be rebuilt. Issei explained. So how powerful are ya? Kuroka suddenly asked, she a playful grin on her face. Everyone else had that question in their heads. Issei did have an eyebrow raised for a moment before he spoke. Bahamut stands above both Off-Eyes and Great Red, combined with D-Drake is just more, like Albion said before, my power is beyond, but even those two could give me trouble. If both Mrbabybornree and Red were to come at me, I would have a problem. Even Great Red could be a bit for me alone. Most of my power will soon settle so I can use it better, Issei explained. He was silent for a moment to let that sink into their minds. All their eyes widened as they understood what it meant. They were standing in front of the most powerful being, but he wasn't attacking, so they were a little calm in front of him. Biku then spoke suddenly. So what do you want? Biku asked. He had a little edge in his tone. Issei sighed and stood up and looked at each one of them in the eyes, for the next sentence he uttered would open the door for them, but they would have to accept it on their own. He couldn't force them, and he wouldn't. As his eyes met each other's, he felt the nervousness behind each locked gaze they had. I came here for a proposition for you guys. It's your choice to accept or not, Issei replied. Their eyebrows raised as they wondered what he was going to offer. Issei turned to Volley and spoke. What I have to offer is you guys become part of my group. In exchange, you let us move in. You see, I'm running out of time and I need a solution before it happens. Issei spoke. What do you mean it, and who is all with you? Volley asked curiously. Everyone else was wondering that too. Was there something else going on behind the scenes with him that they didn't know? If so, what was it and why? Volley's question also sparked some thinking between the group as well. If she accepted his offer, who would be moving in with them? For that they didn't know and would have to wait for it to be revealed. Currently, I have Tiamat the Dragon King and 3 fallen angels with me, Rainier, Calawarner, and Donasik. About it? Well, let's just say my body is currently undergoing an evolution. Issei spoke. That's putting it lightly, partner, D-Drake suddenly spoke aloud. The whole group was surprised at the Welsh dragon's voice that rang out of the green light that appeared on Issei's hand. D-Drake, Issei muttered. The Welsh dragon, Biku muttered. Makes me hot, Naya, Kuroka purred with a slight blush while rubbing her legs. Red 1, Albion spoke aloud, letting them know of his presence. Volley turned around to see her dividing wings released. She was confused, but her mind was on something else entirely. What did he mean by evolution, and why did D-Drake say that he was putting it lightly? For all these questions she had, he would answer them. What's this evolution you're going through? Volley asked. The rest of them wanted to know that too. Issei was about to speak before a blood-red light appeared on his right hand, illuminating the room with quite the amount of pressure. Bahamut spoke with each word packed with power. Issei's going through a very special kind of evolution. His body is adapting to his new power literally. He's going through, you could say, stage 2 of the 4 stages of his evolution. At first, his energy reserves needed to increase, which they did, as you can all tell. Next is his senses will evolve and become exponentially more powerful. Then his body will literally rip itself apart as it rebuilds every part of his body into that of a dragon. Finally, he will go into a full dragon form before reverting back into his human form. Bahamut spoke, each word laced with power that flowed through the room as he spoke aloud. They were not expecting Bahamut to speak, and when he did, they felt shivers like nothing they ever felt before crawl down their spines as each word flowed out of him. So that's your evolution you're going through, Volley muttered. Yes, now you see the situation. I need a place to stay, and you were the first person that came to mind. You see, I have a feeling it won't be easy to just rise to the top. I need allies, people who can hold their own against a tough foe. Issei spoke. The whole group was silent about this before anyone spoke up. Volley was clearly surprised at what she was told. She had no idea what was going on right now. She was truly saddened by the new information her group had received firsthand by Issei. Everyone else felt the same as well. Even anger was rising in the girls, especially Kuroka. She always thought Shiren wouldn't have the heart for betraying and leaving someone alone. So what do you guys say? Want to work together and rise to the top? Issei asked with a grin. Hook, line, and sinker. Instantly all of their heads nodded. They knew it would be different. All right, we accept your offer, Volley replied happily. Great, okay then I will go grab my group and be back here shortly. Issei spoke before standing up. Okay, we will see you when you come back. Volley waved by as he walked out of the mansion. As he left, a conversation started to brew among the five of them at the mansion. To think he went through all that and he is still going headstrong. I can see why Bahamut chose him to have such a strong will after a harsh revelation. Bhikkhu spoke up. No doubt I didn't think my sister Shiren had it in her to be that cruel. Kuroka added seriously. She didn't even use her trademark Naya at the end. And he is completely serious about his goals as well. You could see the fire and determination in his eyes. I can tell he won't stop until it's all done, Volley added. No doubt, at first when I saw him I didn't really think much of him, but I could tell he would do anything for his friends and family, even going to hell and back. Now he had a goal and a reason that will keep reminding him until the day he finishes what he needs to do, Bhikkhu added. I wonder about his group though. Tiamat is Dragon King and 3 fallen angels, Arthur added. We will see them when they get here, brother, Lefei spoke up. She is right, we will meet them when they get here, Kuroka spoke. Hopefully they're strong, Volley muttered. She really wanted to spar against Issei and his group. There is no doubt in my mind that they are strong. If they came back from hell they had to been able to hold their own, Arthur. But how did he come back from hell? Lefei asked. She had never heard from anyone coming back from the land of the dead. There is a legend that there is a place in Hades' realm. It's called the Well of Souls. It is supposedly linked between the two worlds. If someone were to enter the well, they would come back to the world of the living. If he did go through that, then his group is strong. Rumor is that it is guarded by some of Hades' strongest minions. Arthur spoke. I've heard of that legend as well. Azazel had a ton of books and it was in one of them, Volley mused. As the group continued to talk about Issei and his new group, they wondered how it would end up, but they knew there was no going back. Scene break. Issei's location. As Issei teleported back to Kyoto, he arrived right in front of the church. He felt 4 energy signatures from inside of the church. He didn't know why he could now sense the energies around. He could feel it as well, each pulse of power emanating from them. That's your senses starting to evolve. Usually it is energy detection that increases first, then your normal senses after it, hearing, sight, and the others. Bahamut spoke in his mind, answering his question. Bahamut, about my evolution, the final part you said I will go into a full dragon form then revert back to human. Will it happen as soon as I wake up from my slumber? Issei asked, confused. No, it won't happen right after you awake from your slumber. Once your body is changed from the 3rd stage, it will take a couple hours for the required energy to build up so the transformation can start, Bahamut answered him. With that, Issei nodded and walked towards the church's doors. As he opened it, he was met with 4 curiously looks. So this is where you guys stay, Tiamat spoke. She was laughing out loud. So did you get us a better place? Kalawarner asked. Yes, I did, Issei replied happily. He was happy to get out of the church. Where? Tiamat asked curiously. Everyone else was wondering the same. My rival Volley Lucifer happens to have a mansion that we can use. Her group will join ours, Issei replied. Did you say Lucifer? Tiamat asked seriously. Lucifer as in the Lucifer, Donisik asked astonished. Yes, Lucifer, she is the granddaughter of the super devil Rise Vim Liven Lucifer and is the host of the Vanishing Dragon, Issei replied. To think someone with that bloodline would have Albion, wait, that means she is a half-breed, Rainier asked curiously. Yes, she is, and you know how devils are about purebloods, hence she didn't get along with her grandfather, Issei replied. They all nodded. Everyone in the supernatural world knew how stuck-up and stubborn the devils were about heritage and purebloods. So let's go already, I want to get out of this dump, Donasik spoke. Everyone else wanted to get out as well. Issei smiled and nodded and started to make a transport circle. Soon the 5 of them jumped in it, leaving the church forever. As they appeared in front of the mansion, they were astonished at the size of the building they would be staying in. You weren't kidding when you said she had a mansion, Donasik muttered. What do you expect, she is a Lucifer, Tiamat spoke. That's when the door opened, revealing Vali and her group, who were looking at the people Issei brought. So this is them, Vali asked. Yes, Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon King, Rainier, Calawarner and Donasik, Issei replied. There was something bothering Vali. The 3 fallen angels had the unmistakable scent of dragon. Are they part dragon? Vali asked, confused. Yes, I turned them into a dragon, Issei replied. How? Kuroka asked curiously. No one had no idea how he did it either, not even Vali. That's when Bahamut spoke. It is called dragon's essence. You could say it is the life force of a dragon. I drew it out of my new host to turn them into dragons, Bahamut explained. Once everyone heard his voice, they flinched. Even Tiamat didn't expect the annihilation dragon god would speak to them, but she was wrong. But she still felt the power that was etched into the voice coming out of his right hand. Everyone else could feel it as well. All right, you guys settle in. I have some business to attend to, Issei spoke. What business? Rainier asked. The whole group was wondering the exact same thing as they all looked to Issei for an answer. Gonna pay a visit to Azazel and teach him a lesson, Issei spoke. Now that surprised everyone. He was already focused on sending the 3 factions a message, and Azazel would be that one who would deliver it even if he didn't know. What are you gonna do? Vali asked cautiously. She still liked Azazel a lot since he was pretty much a second father to her. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill him, just give him a warning shot, Issei said vaguely. Okay then, hurry up and come back quick, since the moment you enter the Grigori they will know who you are and what you're there for. No doubt word will spread like wildfire, Vali spoke. Issei nodded and then teleported away. He found himself standing in front of an old rundown building. It was definitely the Grigori headquarters even if it didn't look like it, so he walked up to the door but was stopped by a guard above him on his post. Halt right there, this is private property, turn around now and you will not be harmed, he said. That made Issei scoff and he summoned a small sphere of annihilation and threw it at the door, blowing up the front of the building. Issei walked in calmly and spoke. I have no quarrel with you people, I'm only here for your boss Azazel, who made a very bad decision and now must pay for it, Issei spoke. But they weren't moving. That's when a few cadre classes tried to attack him. Issei saw this coming and quickly dodged and punched each one in the gut, incapacitating them. After that display no one dared move. Issei walked forwards where Azazel was. No one dared to try to stop him. The moment he arrived at the door to his office, he kicked it open, revealing a very shocked and troubled Azazel. You know, you could have avoided this if you just told me what the others were planning, but no. You had to leave me in the dark wondering what was going on, only to be thrown out by the people I thought cared about me. Now your time has come, Azazel. Issei spoke powerfully. Issei, please, I'm sorry, Azazel pleaded. I don't give 2 shits about your excuses, Issei spoke. He then grabbed him by the neck and lifted him in the air. Drag 20x boosts and put it in my legs, Issei told the dragon in his head. Roger, Drag replied. Azazel was now beyond fear. He was completely terrified of Issei's new power. He was going to experience firsthand what would happen to the others who deceived him. Boost X20. As soon as the deafening call was echoed throughout the room, Azazel knew it was no use. There was no way to stop him. He would do what he wanted and wouldn't take shit anymore from anyone. He feared for his life, but little did he know Issei wasn't going to kill him. That's when a 20-fold powered kick was sent right into Azazel's balls. As Issei dropped him, Azazel fell to the floor in agony. He never felt that much pain before. Issei stared down at the fallen man. Having no regrets, he walked out of the office. Leaving the Grigori in complete chaos, Issei thought about what he would do about heaven. He didn't really have any beef with them, but they still needed to be dealt with. He looked up to the sky, wondering what the future held for him and his new group. Chapter 9: Enemies Gathering and Testing Limits. PT1. The Grigori was currently in utter chaos in the aftermath of Issei's attack. Azazel laid unconscious on the bed from the pain from Issei's kick to his groin. He had been like that for 2 days. Shemhazai and Barakil are currently watching him for signs of him waking up. They start to have a conversation on what they were going to do about the new threat arising. "How is he?" Barakil asked. "He is doing better than I expected. He should wake up soon. That Hyoudou did a real number on him," Shemhazai replied. "Yes, he did," Barakil muttered sadly. That's when both of them were interrupted as a magic circle appeared behind them. It was blue and had the Leviathan crest. Coming out of it was Seraphal and her sister's peerage, along with Surzets, who had managed to heal enough to where he could stand. He had brought Grafia and his sister's peerage. They all heard about Issei's attack on the Grigori and came over as soon as they could. They honestly expected the building to be gone and all the fallen to be vaporized, but what they saw was the opposite, which made them wonder what his plans were. "How is he?" Seraphal asked as she walked up to the bed to look at the leader of the fallen angels. "Currently unconscious, but we suspect he will wake up soon," Shemhazai spoke up. This changes things now. Issei has shown he isn't afraid to do what it takes, and we're his main targets," Surzets muttered while thinking. "I think we need to hold another meeting between the 3 factions on what to do about him," Seraphal spoke up. Everyone in the room agreed on that. They needed a plan before it was too late. "Brother, what can we possibly do about him? You saw how powerful he was when the Chaos Brigade attacked," Rias spoke up. Everyone was at a lose for words. They knew she was right. They all saddened as they realized they had barely any hope to defeat him and his new group that was growing every day. But that didn't stop them from trying. "We may have a chance if we can't take out the leader. We can take out his forces. If we all band together, we may be able to diminish his power somewhat," Seraphal spoke up. Everyone's eyes widened as they witnessed Seraphal start to take charge. Shemhazai spoke up after that. "Once Azazel wakes up, I will inform him of a meeting that needs to take place. Until then, I suggest we stay under the radar and not make any more mistakes that will anger Hyoudou," Shemhazai spoke up. "Yes, that is what needs done," Seraphal mused. She didn't want to have a run-in with Hyoudou right now. That was the last thing she needed. "Seraphal, we need to hold another meeting between the elders. We need to get all our assets accounted for. We may have a war on our hands," Surzets spoke up. "Yes, you're absolutely right," Seraphal replied. After that, they all dispersed back to their respective duties and prepared for the inevitable. War was coming their way. Scene break with Issei's group. Currently, everyone with Issei is in a separate dimension that Issei made so they can spar and go all out without destroying everything around them. He learned it from Bahamut, who told him it was the same magic the devils used in raiding games. Issei wanted everyone to spar with a partner. He didn't mind who it was, as long as you had a partner to train each other with. The current lineups were Issei vs Volley, Rainier vs Kuroka, Donasik vs Biku, Calawarner vs Lefay, and Tiamat vs Arthur. To Issei, the matches were pretty good. Each one had a pretty good opponent who would push each other past their limits and make them grow stronger. Everyone now stood on the sidelines as they watched Issei and Volley start their match. "I'll give you a handicap. I won't use any of Bahamut's abilities against you unless you want to," Issei said with a smirk. "No, I'll be fine. I think I can stand up somewhat," Volley replied back with her smirk. "Very well," Issei replied back. Everyone was in awe at how they were going to go all out. They stepped back for good measure as the fight was going to be intense. Volley quickly started off dashing towards Issei, who was standing still. She feinted a kick and went for a right uppercut which managed to connect. Issei was surprised at her base speed as he was at his base as well. "How do you like that one?" Volley taunted. "Oh, very good. Speed is impressive, but I think it's time to really get started," Issei replied back. Volley nodded and summoned her dividing gear. The blue wings came out as quickly as she nodded. Issei grinned at seeing the vanishing dragon's sacred gear. He returned the gesture and summoned his boosted gear. Everyone knew it was really starting now. Boost X5. Everyone's eyes widened once again as they felt the power of Issei. It was obvious he wasn't kidding when he said he was now the most powerful being. They wondered what his plan was, since he went straight for 5 boosts and not 1. It was obvious in their minds he was starting to get serious about the fight. They were suddenly ripped from their thoughts as Issei vanished. They all watched around them to see where he had gone. He then reappeared right in front of Volley, who was shocked at his speed. Before she could do anything, he disappeared again. This time he appeared behind her and did a sweep and knocked her off her feet. He disappeared again, but this time they heard something above them. Boost X3. Everyone watched as he increased his power even more. They saw a small sphere of crimson energy form in his palm. "Dragon shot," he spoke aloud and punched the sphere of energy. The dragon shot came hurtling towards the downed Volley, who barely had enough time to register what was coming her way. She quickly rolled out of the way, just barely avoiding the blast that launched debris everywhere. Volley quickly got up and prepared to counter an assault that Issei was probably about to launch. "Albion, is it there any way to possibly match his power?" Volley asked her dragon. "Volley, when I told you that the dragon was extremely powerful, I wasn't kidding around. As it stands, you are outrageously outclassed. You may be able to slow him down a bit, but there is no chance of winning this battle. There is some stuff you might be able to try to even the odds a bit. You are Lucifer. Your blood is that of someone who has the potential to be a super devil. You can claim a huge amount of demonic power. It is your birthright other than that. Divide and use Balance Breaker and any other abilities of mine to help," Albion spoke in her head. Volley cursed as she realized how powerful Issei really was now. She knew it would be a tough fight, but she didn't think she would get her ass handed to her. With her options slowly vanishing, she quickly decided what to do. Vanishing Dragon Balance Breaker. A bright white flash covered the whole area as Volley donned her balance breaker. Issei grinned as he saw the white armor cover his rival. He started once again on his attacks. Issei vanished once again, but Volley had anticipated him using his speed again. She quickly sent an elbow behind her and successfully struck him in the gut, sending him skidding in back. She then proceeded to use one of her abilities. Divide. Issei felt part of his energy fade away as it went to Volley. He cursed as he forgot about the divine dividing gear. He knew that he couldn't be hit by her, or she would just half his power and make it hers. He decided it was time to take it up another notch. "I'm surprised, Volley, that you're able to match my speed. I really am, but I'm not done yet," Issei shouted. "I expected nothing less from you, my rival," Volley replied with a smirk. "Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker." After he shouted that, the crimson energy started to form around him and formed a sphere. They couldn't see what was inside of it. Volley was shocked as she already seen Issei's balance breaker, but this was different. It was more powerful than she last saw. Everyone realized that as well. They wondered how much power he intended to release. Soon the energy sphere started to condense, and soon it faded away, revealing his balance breaker. But it was different. Not just the power, but the look of it wasn't what they seen. The crimson had suddenly been changed to a blood red, and the outline was a sharp gray with a crimson glow surrounding the armor. This was his new balance breaker. Even Issei was surprised as he looked at his balance breaker. "Dragon Bahamut, what happened to my balance breaker?" Issei asked his dragons. "It is something to do with Bahamut's influence," Dragon replied. "This is the result of you getting my power. It has merged with Dragon somewhat. What was affect was your balance breaker and juggernaut drive. Both of them were imbued with my power, effectively making them extremely powerful." Bahamut explained. I'll call it Welsh Annihilation Dragon Balance Breaker, Issei thought. A fitting name for a powerful balance breaker, Drake mused. Volley grinned and took up a stance. Issei was surprised she still wanted to fight, but nonetheless he motioned for her to come. She dashed once again but stopped a few feet from Issei. He was surprised at her sudden stop. He wondered what she was planning. He quickly put up his guard as he felt her energy rise. Half dimension. Issei was not expecting this at all. He quickly fell on one knee as all his power was being drained. He needed to do something quick before it was too late. Boost X15. Everyone was shocked as they saw him boost once again. They knew that he was slowly being stripped of his power, but they didn't think he would just give her more, but they didn't know why he boosted. Boost X15. They started to back up as they felt his energy rise even more, but Volley continued to press, but something was about to stop it. Explosion. That command sent everything into chaos, instantly shattering the half-dimension and blowing apart Volley and Issei's armor. The match was officially over with Issei as the winner. Well, that was a good try there, Volley. You had me cornered for a good bit, Issei said. Should have expected you to win, Volley muttered. She then walked up to Issei. Issei wondered what she was planning. This is your reward for winning, she said with a smirk. Then she smashed her lips forcibly against his in a heated make-out session. Everyone smirked at seeing Volley do it. Issei was surprised at first, but nonetheless reciprocated the kiss. Volley pulled away with a smirk. Issei had a grin on his face. He then spoke up. Okay, Rainier and Kuroka, you're up, he spoke aloud. Rainier had a scowl on. It seemed she still didn't like the idea of sharing Issei, but she couldn't complain now that there were more than 5 people in the harem and would only grow as he attracted more people to the group. She stepped up along with Kuroka, who was smiling. She knew she was at a disadvantage since Rainier had the ability to use light, but that didn't stop her from trying. You ready? Kuroka grinned. Bring it, Rainier replied. Kuroka quickly dashed towards Rainier with a cocked back fist coated with senjutsu energy. It seemed like she was going to hit her target, but as she closed in on Rainier, she was quickly blocked by crossed light daggers that Rainier had formed. Once her fist connected with the daggers, Kuroka quickly backed up after feeling the power that those light weapons that were able to severely damage devils. She needed to avoid being hit by those. She needed a plan. Should have expected to run into an obstacle, she muttered lowly, but it was enough for everyone to hear it. Everyone's eyes widened as her power started to rise. She was already in her Nekashu form, which added even more power. They wondered what she was going to try. She quickly fired off several energy blasts towards Rainier, who dashed backwards and dodged a couple, but one hit her leg. Shit, Rainier muttered. She was kneeling on the ground, catching her breath. Rainier had enough. She stood up and released her wings. Everyone was surprised at her wings. Instead of 1 pair, she had 3 pairs, totaling 6 wings on her back. Issei was proud at seeing how far she had grown. She quickly dashed forwards and formed her light daggers once again, but this time she threw them at Kuroka, who dodged them easily, but didn't see the spear coming her way in time. It was too late once she did notice it. The only she could do was use her senjutsu to form a protective layer around her to help cushion the blow a bit. The spear hit directly in the protective layer, pushing her backwards as the spear started to dissipate. She quickly dispelled the energy around her as she avoided a fairly dangerous spear aimed for her. She dashed once again with her fist charged with energy but stopped shortly before Rainier. Kuroka then proceeded to smash her fist on the ground, causing quite the amount of debris and dust. Rainier couldn't see, neither could Kuroka. But she used her senjutsu to find Rainier and tackle her on the ground. Holding a fist cocked back with a ton of energy, she spoke up. Do you yield? Kuroka spoke up. Rainier was shocked at how she was beaten. She had no choice but to comply. Yes, she said weakly. Kuroka then stood up and helped Rainier up. The both of them walked back to the side, finishing their match and waiting for the next one. Harem edit. Been thinking about the harem for quite a bit. As of now, it has been changed quite a bit and could still be changed even more in the future. Yes Rainer, Kalawarner, Tiamat, Femvali, Kuroka, Lefei, Irina, Amaterasu, Yasaka. No Rias, Sona, Serafal, Grafia, Kaneko, Aquino, Afis, Murayama, Cades, Roswace, Zenobia, Asia. Chapter 10, Enemies Gathering and Testing Limits PT2. It was now Lefei versus Kalawarner. As the two of them walked up to the center, they both prepared to start. Kalawarner knew she was a magician, but she didn't know how much power she wielded, so she did the natural and prepare herself for anything. Issei was watching intently. He knew they could handle each other pretty well, but he wanted to see them break free from the limited power and push forwards like everyone else had done before. When push come to shove is when it would really matter. He, however, knew he would be watching them for a little while only. He had to start gaining allies as fast as he could. His appearance and him almost killing Surzets and him attacking the Grigori could be seen as an act of war. If so, he didn't mind. Let them come. He wouldn't hesitate to unleash all his power and obliterate everyone in his path to the top. Okay guys, I'm going to head out to find some allies. My attack on the Grigori and the Devil's Gathering is most likely an act of war in their eyes, so we need all the help we can get, Issei said while standing up. So you think war is coming? Vali asked curiously. Most likely better safe than sorry, Issei replied. Everyone agreed and nodded their heads. They knew they needed to be prepared for something like this, and with Bahamut's power it would most likely cause a flurry of panic, and they would do anything in their power to stop Issei and his new group. Who are you thinking of asking? Tiamat asked, intrigued. She wondered what was in his head. First, I'm going to heaven to tell them they can do what they want, either stay neutral or fight with the other factions. As for allies, I'm going to go to the Shinto pantheon and Yaokai first, then if they don't join, I'll go to the Greeks. Issei spoke up. The rest of his group nodded, and Issei already started off. Bahamut, how can I get to heaven? Issei asked the dragon. Normally you couldn't, but there are ways to get there. You must know the coordinates of the place and use a transport circle. I don't know who you would go to for that though, Bahamut explained. Issei thought. Issei then needed to get everyone's attention to ask a question, so he stepped out in the middle of the area. Once everyone saw him, they started to follow him, wondering what was going on. Issei Rainer asked, confused. They were all wondering what was going on. Before I leave, anyone know what the coordinates of heaven are? Issei asked. Everyone was shocked. They didn't know what to say. They should have expected it, but it still came as a shock that Issei needed help getting there. He was looking purposefully at the fallen angels. They spoke up after seeing his gaze. Sorry Issei, that was always above our pay grade, Kalawarner spoke up. So I need someone who had more authority? Issei asked. Essentially yes, preferably one that was high enough rank when they fell, Donasik added. Issei quickly cursed. He had a plan to get to heaven now. It was only a backup plan until there was no other choice, and if it worked out right, he would both get to heaven and get a powerful ally. Okay, I'll be heading out now, Issei spoke up. Everyone nodded and watched as he vanished. They had no idea what he was planning and the aftermath of it all. He reappeared back in the underworld and he started to walk further and go deeper. He was going towards his destination. Cocytus, the prison that held his target. Kakabil. Issei knew this was a risky game he was playing, but if it played off and Kakabil helped him out, Issei would return the favor and release him. He also knew Kakabil wouldn't want to miss out on an opportunity to get his revenge on the devils that helped imprison him. But he was stopped short as he felt an enormous pressure cover the area he was in. He heard a deep bellow of rage directed at him. Issei Hyoudou, how dare you come back to my domain? You will not escape once again. This place will be your grave. It was a male voice. Issei turned around to see someone he should have expected. Hades, the god of the dead, was here, and it was obvious he wasn't a friendly. Looks like someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, Drake muttered in Issei's head. Issei stifled a chuckle and focused back on the wrathful god in front of him. Hades, I have no quarrel with you. Sure, I did break free from your realm, but I don't care, so either get out of the way or perish, he spoke up loudly. Hades didn't back down, instead he charged with his pitchfork. Issei quickly dodged it. He wasn't stupid. Hades was one of the top 5 if not 3 most powerful gods out there. He knew he had his work cut out for him. As the pitchfork landed in the ground, Issei watched as several skeletal warriors climbed out from the point of impact. Issei wasn't going to hold anything back this time. He couldn't afford to. Annihilation, Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker. Hades wasn't expecting this, but he gave in and powered up to meet the new dragon god in battle. Issei watched as all the darkness started to get absorbed by Hades. He looked to the god of the dead to see him in a new state. His eyes were pitch black and his robe had darkness rolling off of it. Issei could hear the cries of the souls literally screaming for help. Very well, Hyoudou, if it is a battle you desire, a battle you will get, Hades shouted with a powerful voice. Boost X15. Issei boosted in response and charged with blinding speed towards the god. Hades quickly vanished in a burst of speed and kicked Issei in the back, knocking him out of the air and plummeting to the ground. Hades was waiting for him to return with a counter-attack. He knew the boy wasn't done yet. He had no idea what was about to unfold from his battle with the boy. He didn't know what he would forcibly unleash, and it would take a miracle for Hades to beat it. Boost X30. Issei kicked it up a notch and stood up out of the crater he made from the fall. Hades watched as he rose in the air. He could tell something was different about the boy. It looked like Issei was in a trance of sorts. He was completely silent, and that was eerie to Hades. He wondered what had caused the boy to be like this. He also wondered what was going on in the boy's mind. As Issei met Hades in the air, he didn't move, but suddenly he held his hand out in front and started to summon a sphere of annihilation. Hades started to sweat at seeing the power the boy was suddenly releasing. It was truly terrifying. Even with Bahamut, his power could have been handled with teamwork of some of the strongest gods, but with the boosted gear, it made it impossible to beat him. He could boost his power even higher and climb new heights and wouldn't stop either. Hades quickly dodged the sphere as it was thrown at him super fast, but was too late to dodge a kick that was aimed right at his gut. Looking up at the eyes of the boy, all he saw behind the armor was blood-red eyes burning with determination. Hades didn't know what had caused the change in the boy, but if he knew, he would have left as soon as he could. It was the fact when Issei was first knocked to the ground that he had a revelation. This was one of the most powerful gods, and if he failed here, it would mean the death of everyone else that had joined up with him, and he couldn't allow that to happen. He wouldn't. So he threw away all the rules and his limits and decided to break free from his shell. This was just the start too. Hades was about to do the rest. He was about to unleash and power deep in the boy that its nature was very unbridled. Hades quickly backed away and covered his pitchfork in the dark energy that was around his body. He then spoke up in a powerful voice. "Rise forth, my minions, and serve your eternal master," Hades chanted. That's when the ground started to shake and tremble at his call. Rising from the ground was hundreds of undead soldiers and a few Cerberus. They all looked ready to tear Issei apart at Hades' word. Issei wasn't fazed though. He quickly summoned a ball of energy and punched it towards Hades. Dragon shot. Hades didn't notice it until it was too late. He was hit with it and sent flying away. Issei then turned his attention on the army that was summoned. Descending on the ground, he prepared for an onslaught of attacks from the monsters and undead. Boost X50. With that boost, any undead in the near vicinity was instantly disintegrated. Issei was vicious as he tore through the whole army, slashing with powerful clawed strikes with the boosted gear's gauntlet. But more enemies kept coming and coming, and Issei was running low on steam. Explosion. He called out to give him a little breathing room. But it didn't last for long. Sadly, something was about to happen. He didn't notice Hades returning to the battle, and he was too late to feel the extreme presence of energy rising above him. He turned around too late only to get pierced with Hades's pitchfork. Coughing up blood, Issei was kneeling on the ground. Hades descended and spoke up. It was fun while it lasted, Hyoudou, but this is the end, Hades spoke up. Issei was about to protest or try to do something, but he knew he was running on empty. That's when Hades made the mistake of speaking again. The next sentence he would say would seal his fate. Oh, just so you know, all those people you gathered are going to die once I leave here to tell the 3 factions you have been disposed of, and I will personally drag those 3 fallen angels back to the realm of the dead. Hades spoke foolishly. Issei felt something boil deep inside of him, like a supernova of anger was rising deep in his heart, and it couldn't be vanquished by anything. Hades heard him muttered something but didn't catch it, so he asked him. What did you say? He asked cockily. I'll kill you, Issei shouted in fury. That's when it started. Issei felt his blood boil at the thought of everything he worked for going to waste. He wasn't going to die here now. No, he wouldn't. That's when Hades noticed the blood-red glow surrounding Issei. Soon it erupted into a frenzy of power. Every undead minion and soldier was instantly vaporized by the power that he was releasing. It just kept rising too. It was also coming off in bursts. With every step Issei took, the whole ground shook violently. Hades had unleashed a new ability in the boy that wasn't supposed to be used yet, due to the fact it was extremely unstable. This was Armageddon's call. Hades quickly backed up, seeing the massive amount of destruction he had released upon the area, and it was clear he was going to die here today. He tried to flee but was met face to face with a bloodthirsty Issei. Hades was quickly punched in the gut, making his back arch up. Issei then proceeded to follow up with a powerful axe kick that sent the god of the dead hurtling towards the ground. Issei descended on the ground towards the fallen god. Hades looked up to the boy as his balance breaker fell off, but he was still giving off the immense amount of power. He knew this was the end. Why? Hades asked weakly as he stared at his executioner. Why? You ask me that when you should know already. You dare threaten my friends and family and not to expect me to keep my promise of killing you. That's the problem with you gods and supernaturals. You think universe revolves around you. Well, guess what? It doesn't. It is time for a change. Many more will fall before me. It is the beginning of a new era, he shouted. Hades only closed his eyes and accepted his fate. It was the only thing he could do, and he agreed partly with the boy. Change was coming, and it was coming faster than anyone could see it. With one powerful strike, the head of Hades rolled on the floor, decapitated from its body. The god of the dead was no more. Issei then proceeded to continue deeper to his original destination. Finally reaching the prison of Cocytus, he blasted the doors apart with a sphere of annihilation. He stepped through and began once again. He quickly killed any guards that got in his way and made his way towards the cell that held his target. Finding the steel door, he quickly blasted it apart, revealing a shocked but amused Cockabeel. Issei Hyoudou, or should I say Sekurite, he spoke with a chuckle. Chapter 11, Enemies Gathering Testing Limits Finale. Cockabeel was surprised to see the boy blow up his cell. He was amused that he was being broke out by the person who helped imprison him. Issei Hyoudou, or should I say Sekurite, he spoke with a grin. Cockabeel, Issei replied dryly. So what can I do for you on this fine day? He asked sarcastically. He knew something was up. Why would the boy who helped to imprison him be here to break him out? Well, let's see, I got a proposition for you, one that you couldn't refuse. Issei had a shit-eating grin. Oh, please enlighten me on this proposition you have, Cockabeel replied back. Issei looked directly at him and spoke. A storm is coming, one that will change the world forever. You can have the chance right now to be on the winning side. You can even take Citri's head and put it on the wall, Issei spoke with a grin. Cockabeel's eyes widened. Explain, was all he said. So Issei started to explain to him how he was betrayed and how he came back and started to plan out. He knew Cockabeel would join, since when he heard about a war coming his eyes lightened up. So let me get this straight. You were betrayed by the factions and you ended up dead, and then you were chosen by Bahamut, the most powerful dragon to exist, to bring back the dragons and bring about a new change in the world. And to top it all off, you got your own group that is going to war against the factions, he asked aloud. Correct, Issei replied. Count me in, Cockabill shouted in glee. Issei chuckled and stood up. Very well, however, there are some things we need to go over first, Issei said seriously. Cockabill looked like he was expecting that. Okay, go on, he replied. 1. We are going to heaven first, and I need you to give me the coordinates. 2nd, we are going to gather allies afterwards. Then we will regroup with the rest of the group at Vali's mansion. Lastly, Rias and her peerage are mine to kill. Issei spoke very seriously. You got a deal, boy, Cockabill said with a grin. Issei stood up and motioned for Cockabill to follow him. Cockabill had a question that he needed to ask. What about Hades, he asked. Decapitated, Issei replied bluntly. Damn, Cockabill replied. He couldn't believe it, this kid had changed this much. He remembered how he protected the peerage with his life. Now he was as deadly and cunning as a cobra. He wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of his attacks. He wondered how strong he was now. With Dragon and Bahamut, it had to be mind-boggling. So how do we get to heaven, Issei asked. Cockabill told him the coordinates, and Issei put them in a magic circle and both of them stepped through. When they got there, it was surprising to Issei. It was as he thought it would be, only more. White and gold covered the buildings for miles as far as they could see. Issei looked to the side to see Cockabill looking disgusted. It was obvious he didn't like the place at all. Halt, who goes there? A voice above them shouted. They looked up to see a group of armored angels with golden spears. Issei smirked and shouted. Bring me to your leaders, he shouted back, his voice dripping with power. Everyone felt it. They shivered at the commanding presence it held. They had no choice but to accept his demand. They descended on the ground. Follow us, they said. Issei and Cockabill followed the angels up the staircase and to the main building. If Issei had to assume they were currently in the first heaven, they soon were on sixth heaven, and standing before them were the 4 seraphs. Issei, I knew you would be coming, Michael suddenly said. You should have, he replied back. Michiel took a look at Cockabill and sighed. So it seems the rumors are true. You do plan to change the world forever at any cost, he said. Gabriel didn't seem too happy to see Cockabill. Why, Issei, she asked. You should know, of all people, Gabriel, I was betrayed out of pure greed. One of the biggest sins, like I said to Hades before I dealt the finishing blow. Everyone's supernatural is flawed in some way. Change is coming, he spoke up. Issei, a quiet voice called out. Issei turned around to see none other than Irina Shidou. She looked like she hadn't gotten that much sleep. He could see bags under her eyes. Irina, he said softly. She registered his voice and rushed and bear hugged him. Issei, they said you were dead, she cried. Issei glared at the 2 seraphs. We didn't tell her that, Michael spoke up. Issei turned to Irina and asked. Who told you that, the devils, he asked. She nodded her head. It's a long story, he muttered. He then told Irina about his betrayal and his resurrection with Bahamut. Irina started to get real angry. She didn't like that statement very much. So you're telling me those devils threw you away like garbage, she seethed. Yes, Irina, he replied. She cried once again and hugged him. I'm so glad you're alive, she screeched. He quickly wrapped his arms around her to comfort her. I've decided I'm going to come with you, she said. That surprised everyone in the room. Michiel quickly spoke up. Are you sure, Irina, he asked. Yes, she spat. Michael sighed. He knew that he couldn't do anything about it. Issei then spoke up. This is my final thing to say, seraphs. I don't hold resentment to you guys. However, it is your choice whether or not you guys will fight with the other factions. If you do, it is a matter of a fight to the death. I will not hold back. He spoke up. They nodded, and then Issei, Cockabill and Irina vanished back into their magic circle. Scene break, the underworld. Back in the underworld, the 4 Satan had started a meeting between the elders. So what are we going to do? One of them asked. War is coming, there is no doubt about that, another added. True, but he is still able to top all of us, the Fennec's head spoke up. What you all say is correct, however his forces are not as strong as him. We may not be able to beat him, but his forces can be beaten, Seraphal shouted. What Seraphal says is correct, there is a small hope for a victory, Akuja added. However, we all know he can destroy all of us without even trying. Do you really think he would let his group fall? Even Surzech saw his power at the young devil's gathering, an elder shouted. Silence, Surzech shouted angrily. That shut everyone up. Surzech may have been heavily injured before, but now he was back on his feet and he still had a ton of power. His power of destruction was crackling off his body as he shouted. He quickly calmed down to let Seraphal take over. She then spoke up after everyone calmed down. What you all say is true, however we will not stand here and wait for him to come and destroy us all. We will fight, she shouted. They all started chattering and nodding their heads. It seemed Seraphal and the Satans had rallied the devils to fight. Seraphal then looked to Surzech, who nodded. They had to go to another meeting with the other factions. The four Satans then disappeared into a magic circle and reappeared back in the place where the other meeting of the three factions was held. Q Academy. They appeared in the room with the two seraphs Michael and Gabriel and Azazel, who was awake, but he had to use crutches since his tailbone was broken. Shemhazai and Barakiel were in the room as well. Rias and Sona's peerage were there too. The meeting was about to begin. Well, we all know what we're here about, Azazel spoke weakly. Yes, Michael added. Well, what are we going to do? Seraphal asked. Are we in agreement that we need to join forces to have a chance of winning? Surzech asked. I'm in, Azazel replied. They looked to the angels then. Fine, we will fight too, they agreed finally. Before anyone could speak again, Michael spoke up. I, however, have some bad news, he said. What bad news? Seraphal asked. Issei was visited heaven earlier, he replied. What? Seraphal shouted. He had someone with him too, he said weakly. Who? Azazel asked. Michael was silent. Everyone wanted to know. Cockabeel, he replied. The whole room was in chaos after that statement. How? Seraphal screeched. He probably broke him out, Surzech added. Most likely, Azazel muttered. What about Hades? Shouldn't have he been guarding the area? Seraphal asked. The Cocytus was a river of the underworld, so it did fall in Hades' domain. It seems Hades has fallen in battle, Gabriel replied. Everyone was silent. It was even more that one of the most powerful gods was killed by Issei. It dawned on them just how strong he really was. So he has a Kadri-class fallen angel now on his side, Seraphal muttered. It looks like that way, Azazel added. Before anyone else could speak up, the whole room darkened. Everyone got anxious and prepared for an attack. They saw a purple mist with what looked like snakes in the middle curling around two silhouettes. The mist vanished, revealing Office the Mrbabybornree's Dragon God and Cao Cao. It seemed Kao's brigade decided to make an appearance. Oh, Office, Seraphal muttered. Everyone was still on edge with the new arrivals. What do you guys want? Azazel asked curiously. We are here to help you, Cao Cao spoke up. Everyone was shocked to their cores. Did they hear him right? Office wanted to help them. I will offer a truce for right now, as that Hyoudou boy is more of a problem for me at the moment. Office spoke up. Very well, you have a deal, Mrbabybornree, Seraphal agreed. So you will fight with us? Surzech asked. Yes, the Kao's brigade will fight against him and his group, Office replied. Good, Azazel muttered. Until then, Office spoke up before leaving with Cao Cao. Everyone was shocked at how it all turned out. It seemed they had a viable plan and the help of a dragon god to fight against Issei and his new group. They had a small glimpse of hope. They didn't know Issei was planning something, however, that would help him. Scene break with Issei, Cockabeel and Arena. The three of them just entered a magic circle that was destined for Kyoto. Issei planned on recruiting Yasaka and the Shinto gods. They were at the bottom of the hill, which had the stairs upwards towards the shrine that housed Yasaka. Okay guys, listen up, we're here without warning, no sudden movements or fighting, Issei spoke. Irina nodded and Cockabille spoke up. Fine by me, he shrugged. Issei nodded and turned around and led them up the hill. When they got up the hill and the shrine was revealed, they were in awe. Even Cockabille couldn't deny it. It was a true sight to see. Issei should have expected to see something like this. After all, Yasaka was the leader of the Yaokais. He quickly walked up to the two gigantic doors and knocked loudly. A few moments later, they opened, revealing a shrine maiden in a kimono. How can I help you? She asked cautiously. I wish to speak with Yasaka, he replied. She blinked a few times, then narrowed her eyes. Why? She asked. Something she needs to hear that will affect her life either way, he replied in a commanding voice. She flinched as she heard his voice. It was like a king over his subjects. It was a powerful one at that. She quickly backed up and motioned them to follow her. She led them down a hallway, and at the end of it was a gigantic set of doors. The shrine maiden told them to wait outside and went in the room. A few minutes later she came out and told them to come in. Once they walked in the room, they weren't shocked to see it like a messy office with papers everywhere. She was a faction leader, so she had a lot of work to do. The moment Issei saw Yasaka, he felt his instincts kick in again. He groaned as he realized what Bahamut and Dragon said about mating was right. She was incredibly beautiful. She had long golden hair that had curled white tips at the end. She wore a golden honeyed kimono that flowed past her knees. She must have known Issei was staring at her, since she gave him a wink which caused him to blush. Forcing it down and regaining his composure, he spoke up. Lady Yasaka, I have come here today with an offer, he said. She raised an eyebrow before speaking up. Oh, what kind of offer? She replied. She had a flirty tint in her tone. Issei then got deadly serious. There is a war coming between my group and the three factions. We would like you to join us, he spoke up. That caught her off guard really fast. First off, what caused this war and why should I join your side? She asked, intrigued. He then explained once again about how he was betrayed and how he got back into the world of the living. He also explained what his group currently was. She looked very upset and disgusted at the same time. She never heard of that kind of behavior from devils and fallen before. She knew they had their moments, but this was just shocking to say the least. She was silent for a good bit of time. What is your names? She asked. Issei Hyoudou, this Irina Shidu, an angel who joined my side, and Cockabille, who was freed from the prison of Cocytus after Hades was defeated by me. He spoke up. Yasaka's eyes quickly widened. Hades was defeated, the god of the dead. Hades lost, you beat him? She asked. Yes, he is no more. Bahamut's strength is something greater than Great Red and Offeyes, he replied. She had heard the stories of the Annihilation Dragon God, but to witness the power it had firsthand was something else. Issei had summoned the Armageddon's descent, and everyone was awed at the power it was releasing. Very well, Issei Hyoudou, you will have my support in the upcoming war. I will speak with Amaterasu and the other Shintos to see what they will do, she spoke up finally. Thank you so much, Lady Yasaka, he bowed. Oh please, no formalities or honorifics, just call me Yasaka Issei. She had that same flirty tone in her voice again. Issei quickly blushed once again, but he was able to force it down again. He motioned to Irina and Cockabille, who nodded. The three of them disappeared back into a magic circle, leaving Kyoto. They were headed back to Vali's mansion. Issei knew there was going to be some explaining that needed to be done. The moment they saw Cockabille, they wouldn't be too happy to see him at all. As they reappeared out of the circle, Issei was dead on in his thoughts. They all had weapons ready, aimed to kill. Cockabille had a grin on his face at seeing everyone get so defensive. Issei, what is Sharkface doing here? Vali asked. She wasn't thrilled. Tiamat just looked amused, while the three fallen angels were fuming. What the hell, man? Donasik screeched. Issei sighed and then spoke up. He is joining us. I broke him out of Cocytus after I killed Hades, he said. That shocked all of them. Tiamat was rubbing her legs together at his statement. Hades, the god of the dead, killed, Vali muttered. Everyone had similar thoughts after hearing his claim. Yup, I decapitated him in the underworld, he replied. They all didn't expect that. We also have some more allies. Yasaka has agreed to aid us when we need it. She also said she would speak to the Shinto pantheon and see what they think. Issei spoke. So it's inevitable, huh? Rainier asked. Pretty much, Calawarner added. Until that day comes, we will prepare and hone our skills. I will continue to gather more allies and dragons. Issei spoke up. He then had an idea. Who is the next group of people who will become part dragon? He spoke up. Everyone blinked as they understood his statement, 3 hands raised. Kuroka, Kakabeel, and Irina all wanted to do it. He sighed and spoke up. When I do this, you will pass out from the pain of your bones reconstructing, and once you wake up you will be part dragon. You will have more energy reserves and some more abilities than you normally had. Are you guys ready? He spoke up. They all nodded. He then formed 3 spheres of dragon essence and put it on their hands and watched as they all glowed white as the essence was absorbed. He watched as they all dropped on the ground unconscious. He turned to Tiamat. Hey Tiamat, come here, he spoke. He had a job for him to do. Yes, Issei, she asked. I need you to do a job for me, he spoke up. She was surprised. What? She asked curiously. Since you can hide your energy quite well and take on different forms, I want you to snoop around Q Academy and see what the devils are planning. I'm sure Sona and Rias have information on it. I need you to find out what they know. He spoke. She thought about it for a second, then nodded. Okay, I will do it, she nodded. He gave her a smile and hugged her, which surprised her and made her blush. Thank you, he whispered. He got a kiss on the cheek in response. His mouth was open and gaping at her. Close your mouth or you'll catch flies, she teased him. He quickly composed himself and walked back to the group. He heard her vanish into her own magic circle and go to work on her end. As he was walking back, he started to feel sore, but this was different. It wasn't just his energy. His whole body flared in pain. That's when he heard a crack. He quickly fell on his knees and screamed as he started to feel more bones cracking. Everyone rushed over to see him already on the ground unconscious. The 3rd stage of his evolution had begun. Chapter 12, Sneaking Around PT-1. None of them knew what to do. They knew what it was and what it meant, though. He was going to be out cold for at least 2 weeks. The only thing they could do was let it go through its course and wait for him to wake up. They wondered what it would do to his mentality and how far it would change him. Everyone was worried about him. Rainier knew he had a drastic change when she met him in the realm of the dead. She knew it instantly. He wasn't the perverted boy she went on a date with before. He was, for a lack of terms, bitter and vengeful at his betrayal, and he would do anything to right the wrongs that had been committed that day, even if it meant going against everything he knew and accepting a new truth of his reality. Boy, was it a big reality check. To go from a pawn in her peerage to holding responsibility for creating a dragon faction was one hell of a switch for anyone to accept. She knew he had built walls around the pain that was embedded deep within him, but slowly over time they started to crumble with everyone he added to his new life. The one thing in her mind was that fact, if that was going to go to waste or not. If everything was going to take another 180-degree turn in a few weeks or not. She knew after he woke up, he had another few days before the final stage began, and that is what made her wonder about his mental state. She also knew that if he experienced heartbreak again, it would be disastrous. That was putting it lightly. He would obliterate the people who caused it without any remorse whatsoever. Rainier was brought out of her thoughts as Kuroka spoke up. What do we do? She asked aloud. Vali looked around to the others and spoke up. If what we know is true, that his body is currently undergoing a change, all we can do is let nature take its course and wait until it wakes up, she said. Surprisingly, Kakabeel decided to speak. I agree with the brat. What we're dealing with is a power incomprehensible to any of us here, and if we try to do something as foolish like forcibly trying to wake him up could cause a backlash effect that will release a ton of destructive power, he said. Everyone just blinked. Volley turned to glare at him for calling her a brat, but she agreed what he said was true. If something they did to try to help him went wrong, it could have unforeseen consequences. Rainier and Donasik exchanged glances with each other. Before one of them could speak up, Calawarner beat them to it. Let's get him inside and settled in a room. We'll take turns watching over him. We don't know what to expect out of this, she said. Everyone instantly agreed and nodded with her. Volley and Cockabeel took his arms while Rainier and Donasik took his legs. Kuroka and Calawarner took a hold of his midsection so that with all 6 of them he wouldn't be dropped. Soon he was sitting in a bed. Rainier had taken the first shift of watching over him. In the living room, a conversation began to take place among the rest of the group. Does anyone know exactly what kind of evolution Hyoudou is undergoing? Cockabeel spoke up. Everyone turned to him confused. Why, what does that have to do with anything? LeFay asked confused. Cockabeel sighed and rubbed his forehead. He felt a headache coming from everyone's ignorance about the situation. Evolutions have a very profound effect on the person or creature that undergoes it. Depending on his type he is dealing with, the effects could be drastic or not at all, he explained. Volley looked confused at his statement. Where did you learn all this? You were never this smart at the Grigori, she chuckled. Cockabeel glared at her before sighing. I may be a warmonger, but I am not a complete idiot, he replied dryly. Volley looked serious for a moment. Well, what we know right now is that his body is changing to handle the power of Bahamut. It was a 4-stage evolution he had. First and second stages were his strength and energy reserves being increased drastically. This is the 3rd stage where his body starts to completely rebuild itself for the final stage where he becomes a real dragon before reverting back to human form, Volley explained. Cockabeel was thinking for a bit before even speaking up. We may have something to worry about. When he reverts back to human, his personality may be changed a bit. I doubt it will affect us at all. However, those people who betrayed him wouldn't want to be near him, he said. Kuroka looked confused before speaking up. So you're saying he will be more wrath-filled at the other factions for what happened? She asked for confirmation. Cockabeel looked deadly serious. Precisely, he replied. That's when Volley noticed something was wrong. Where's Tiamat? She asked aloud. Everyone looked around and found out that the Dragon King was nowhere in sight. Kuroka decided to speak up. I saw her talking with Issei before he fell unconscious, she said. Everyone mused on what she could be doing. Scene break somewhere in Kyoto. Tiamat, for a lack of better terms, was still confused on where to start. She knew she eventually have to spy on the devils and see what she could get from them. She finally decided what course of action to take. School was already out, so she was going to snoop around the Hyoudou household to see what she could find out. With that set in her mind, she continued forwards. Soon before she knew it, she was already in front of the house. She quickly masked her presence so no one would know she was there. She snuck around to the window where the living room was and listened in. She started to hear them talking about something. Are you sure that's a good idea? It was a male voice. She didn't really know anything about them, but she knew Issei was with them before and didn't take kindly to being betrayed. Kiba, we have no choice. We need more pieces to be able to combat him. You know the power he had now. It was Rias who spoke up next. Tiamat wondered who they were planning to recruit. Butchu, those two are just normal humans, even if they know how to fight, Kiba replied. Tiamat was still confused at this. That is enough, Kiba, the decision is final, she said. It was eerily silent now. Tiamat felt a dreading sensation coming on. She quickly started to step away from the house, thinking she may have been found out. She dashed away as she saw the front door open and the whole peerage step out. She was masking her presence, though. She knew they shouldn't have been able to sense her easily. She then looked to the girl with white hair and knew she was able to sense her with senjutsu. "Where are you?" Rias shouted with authority. Tiamat didn't like this situation. She figured Issei wouldn't care if she thrashed them about a bit either. It was seemingly like that was going to happen soon. She noticed the knight of the group start to go towards her way as the rest of them followed. She quickly dodged a slash from his sword that cut open the bushes she was hiding behind. "Who are you?" Rias asked seriously. She was glowing crimson. Tiamat smirked and stood up. "A very close friend of your ex-spawn Issei Hyoudou," she said in a flirty tone. Everyone was shocked and then they narrowed their eyes. "What's your name?" Kiba asked. She turned to the knight and spoke in a bone-chilling tone. "Omi, allow me to introduce myself. I am Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, one of the 5 Dragon Kings," she said with a grin. Everyone shivered as she let her power leak, and they now knew he was gaining some very powerful allies. Rias looked conflicted before speaking up. "What do you want?" she asked seriously. Tiamat was amused at the girl. "I bring bad news, devils. Issei Hyoudou doesn't like what happened to him that much. Prepare yourselves for the war that is coming straight at you. Issei has made it very clear to our group that your heads will be mounted on a wall when he is done," she said with an eerie grin. Everyone flinched at her words. They knew they couldn't fight her at all. She was a dragon king and they were barely a peerage. They had no choice but to back off. They quickly summoned their own magic circle and teleported away from a fight that was about to happen. Tiamat looked upset that she didn't get to toss them around a bit. Sighing to herself, she made her own circle and hopped in it and went back to the mansion. When she arrived there, she knew something was wrong. She walked into the house to see the group minus Kuroka in the living room. "What's going on?" she asked. Vali looked to her and was a little angry at her being gone. "Where have you been?" she questioned her. Tiamat just tilted her head. "Issei sent me on a mission to spy on the devils and see what kind of information I could get from them," she replied. Vali's eyes widened and she lowered her head. Tiamat noticed this and decided to speak up. "What happened?" she asked. Rainier spoke up. "Issei has begun his 3rd stage of his evolution and is unconscious," she answered. Tiamat's eyes widened. He had already undergone it. In her head, there was a lot of questions that needed to be answered. So the group sat her down and filled her in on the details about what happened. She was listening intently on what was being said. It seemed he was going through a rough patch. Kakabil looked at Tiamat and spoke up. "So what did you find out?" he asked. Everyone else looked to her to see her answer. "It seems the devils are moving to counter us as he thought. His old peerage has decided to bring 2 new recruits in. I don't know who though. I did have a confrontation with them before they escaped in a magic circle," she replied. Kakabil was in thought for a minute. "It seems they are mobilizing for war," he mused. Vali wondered what he was thinking. He was the one she would ask him about the topic. He was a warmonger after all. "What do you think we can expect?" she asked him. He looked at her for a moment before answering. "Honestly, anything. In times of war the factions are unpredictable. If they have all united, that's only more against us, not to mention if they gathered any more allies," he replied. Vali thought about it for a moment. "So pretty much expect a full-scale battle like the Great War, but worse?" Vali asked. Everyone was shocked. If that is what they were going to expect, then it was going to be very bloody. "Yes," he said. With that in their minds, they continued on about their days while still thinking about Issei and his evolution that he was going through. They knew it was going to be a couple of long weeks without him. They would manage though. They had to. For him. Scene break, Underworld. In an office of one of the 4 great Satans, Surzech had gotten a call from his sister Rias. He was told that they had some information that he needed to hear, and that it pertained to Issei. Hyoudou was still a rough subject for him. His defeat was handed to him on a silver platter. He couldn't do anything to stop the power that he had at his disposal. He looked up to see his sister's peerage enter the room. He quickly stood up and told them to take a seat and they would begin. So what is it that you have to tell me? He asked curiously. His sister Rias was the one to speak up. Issei has gathered some allies. We found one of them snooping around the house last night, she said. Surzech raised an eyebrow at this. Oh, who was it? Did they say anything of importance? He asked. Rias looked solemn for a moment. She said she was the Chaos Karma Dragon Tiamat and that Issei plans to mount our heads on a wall after he's done, she replied. That unnerved Surzech greatly. Issei Hyoudou was becoming stronger and stronger every day, not just in individual strength but overall numbers as well. The situation was getting worse. They feared it was counting down. They were hoping to buy time to prepare for the inevitable, but now it seemed like that wasn't going to be possible. He was thinking intently on what to do. He looked to his sister and her peerage and spoke up. I'm going to inform Serafal of this. If the danger starts to increase, we may need to pull you guys out of Kuo and back to the underworld, he said. They nodded and got up to leave. For now, keep a close eye around you at all times, he said. With said, they returned to Kuo, leaving Surzech alone to think about what he was going to do. First, he was going to stop by Serafal's office and inform her, then he would stop by the Grigori and tell Azazel. Before he knew it, he had already jumped into his own circle and appeared outside Serafal's office. He started towards the doors and continued forwards. Once Serafal noticed the door open, she was surprised to see him. Surzech, what's going on? She asked, confused. He looked solemn for a moment. We have some news that Rias found out, he said. She leaned forwards and motioned for him to continue. It seems Issei has been gaining more allies. Tiamat was snooping around the house and it ended in a standoff and she said some colorful words, he explained. That alarmed Serafal. It seemed the situation was getting worse and worse every day. She looked to Surzech seriously. What did she say? She asked. When Issei is done, he plans to mount their heads on a wall, he replied curtly. That shocked her. This is troubling. First Cockabeel, now Tiamat. I assume Tiamat was the first one he went to recruit. We need to find out where his group's location is, she said. Surzech nodded and agreed with her. It was starting to get out of control. So what are you going to do now? She asked. He looked at her for a second before replying. I'm going to inform Azazel and see if he has any ideas on how to locate him, he replied. She nodded and Surzech disappeared into another magic circle, continuing forwards on his goal. However, he didn't know about the storm that was coming his way. Chapter 13, Sneaking Around PT2. Azazel didn't know what to expect when Surzech showed up at the Grigori unexpectedly without no prior warning that he was coming, so he was a little apprehensive. Surzech, what can I do for you? He asked hesitantly. Surzech looked around his office for a second before turning back to Azazel. I have some news about Issei Hyoudou, he said. Azazel raised his eyebrows. He was now listening intently. What is it? He asked curiously. Surzech looked serious for a moment before replying. Rias and her peerage had a run-in with one member of his group, and it was shocking to learn who it was, he said. Now that grabbed Azazel's attention. He leaned in closer. Who was it? He asked. Surzech looked him in the eyes and replied. Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, he replied. Azazel's eyes widened. Tiamat was a very powerful dragon. She wasn't a dragon king for nothing after all. If he had gotten her on his side, that meant he was also gaining more power every day, and he would soon be ready to finish what was started. Azazel knew he would finish it too. Azazel was thinking hard for quite a bit. He knew something needed to be done and that they needed more information. He had an idea, but he didn't know how it would play out. So what do we do? He asked Surzech to see if he had anything in mind. Rias and Sona are still in Kuo, but if the need arises, they will fall back to the underworld. I think it's time to start totaling up our resources and start gathering allies as well, he replied. Who do you have in mind? He asked. Surzech knew who he wanted to go to first. The Norse faction, he answered. Azazel hummed in thought and nodded his head. That is most likely the best course at this moment. Odin will no doubt help us. With the Norse gods on our side as well, we will stand a better chance at not being annihilated, he mused. Azazel needed to get his thought on something else. We need information about his group. Any ideas? He asked. Zurzech looked at him for a minute. I don't. His group must be very close, so they would keep secrets from anyone other than the group itself, he mused. Azazel decided to say what he thought. What about a spy? He asked. Zurzech looked in thought for a moment. It could work. They would feed information to use. However, if they were to get caught, their life would be forfeits, he said. Zurzech did make a good point. Azazel knew if the person he was thinking about would get caught, they wouldn't be treated nicely. However, he still had to try. He knew who he was going to send anyways, and she should fit in with them pretty well. It was Penamu. Well, I already have a person in mind to be our spy, he said suddenly. Zurzech looked at him. Who is it? He asked curiously. Penamu, he replied. Zurzech nodded to himself. He knew it would be easy for them to trust her. Okay, fine. When is she set to leave? He asked. Azazel sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. She has already left. We think they may have grouped up with Vali, so she is heading to their mansion, he said. Zurzech nodded once again. Okay, just keep us in the loop of what goes on, he said. Azazel nodded, and soon Zurzech left in his magic circle. He was going to his next destination. Asgard, the home of the Norse gods. Scene break with Penamu. Penamu currently found herself walking through the woods on a trail that she knew that led to Vali's mansion. Everyone had a good reason to believe that Issei had went to them pretty quickly. She was the holder of Albion and divine dividing, so it was only natural. She was also wondering what she would encounter when she got there. Would the group be bloodthirsty and vengeful? That she didn't know. However, what she and everyone didn't know is that once she got there, her ideals and morals would drastically challenged by what she would find. It would change her forever. Before she knew it, she was standing in front of the massive white doors of Vali's mansion. She prepared herself for what she would receive from inside the mansion. With her nerves steeled, she knocked on the door. She wasn't expecting the person to open the door. Kakabil. He wasn't expect to see her at all. What do you want? He sneered. She raised her hands up in a passive manner. I left the Grigori. I don't want anything to do with them, she lied. Kakabil's eyebrows raised. So you want to join us, huh? He asked. She nodded her head. He sighed and led in the mansion. Well, you'll have to talk to the boss later, he said. She knew he meant Issei, but he said later. Did that mean he wasn't there, or was something going on? What's she doing here? A surprised Vali asked. Kakabil looked to the female and replied. She's wanting to join us. It seems she left the Grigori, he shrugged. Vali sighed after hearing that. Well, Penamu, you'll have to wait for your answer, she said vaguely. Penamu was extremely confused. What's going on? She asked. Vali shrugged and replied. Issei has fallen into a coma, you could say, although it was self-induced, she confessed. Penamu was confused again. Why would he be in coma, she thought. Before she could ask what she meant, she heard footsteps from upstairs. They were coming downwards. Soon Rainier, Kalawarner, and Kuroka all appeared. Rainier and Kalawarner were livid at seeing her. What is she doing here? They both screamed enraged. Kuroka's face was blank. She was obviously on edge at seeing a new face. She didn't know who she was. It was obvious she was a fallen angel. I left the Grigori. Things there are becoming too hectic. Azazel is paranoid and has started ordering the organization to prepare for war, she lied. Kakabil snorted. So you've come to the side that will win, huh? He mused. It wouldn't be right if a few people weren't suspicious. Some of them were, but they didn't voice it. Rainier and Kalawarner were jealous mostly, while Vali didn't really mind. Where's the rest of you guys? Penamu asked. She knew Tiamat wasn't here. Arthur and Lefay are training right now, and Tiamat is watching Issei currently, Donasik, I don't know where he is, Vali replied. Penemu had another question. How long has he been out, she asked. Vali looked to everyone and shrugged. Probably around a week or two, she answered. Before Penemu could ask another question, Cockabeel decided to speak up. So what are we going to do in the meantime until he wakes up, he asked. Vali looked at him like he was utterly stupid. We train and wait until he wakes up so we move forward, she replied. However, none of them knew what was going on with Issei at the moment and how he would wake up very soon. He would also have news about something. They had no idea what was about to come to pass. Scene break, Issei's dream. Issei didn't know where he was, he had an idea. However, it was only a tiny one. He knew if it was true, there was more to why he was here. All he could see was colors, clusters of red, blue, green, pink, and purple as far as he could see. It was endless. The idea he had in his mind was growing stronger by every moment he looked around and saw nothing but stars. He knew where he was. The dimensional gap. Home of the apocalypse dragon, Great Red. Bahamut D-Drag, he tried reaching his dragons. No answer, he decided to summon his sacred gear. Nothing, the boosted gear wouldn't form and neither did Annihilation's descent. Something was blocking his connection. He knew who it was instantly. Your dragons can't help you here, Issei Hyoudou, a powerful voice spoke. Issei turned around and was met with a gigantic red dragon with golden eyes. This was truly the apocalypse dragon of legend, Great Red in the flesh. Issei felt like a pebble now compared to the dragon's size. He knew, however, he was here for a reason. Great Red, Issei replied. He tried to sound respectful. Great Red snorted. No need to be fearful, Issei. I only brought you here to answer some questions, he said vaguely. Why can't I contact my dragons? Issei asked. Great Red rolled his eyes and replied. I am the dragon of dreams, as you are asleep now undergoing your own evolution. Dreams are my domain. Bahamut may be the annihilation dragon god, but his domain is destruction. That's where he gets his power from. Like with Offai's, hers is infinity. She gets her power from just that concept. I am the dragon of dreams, and as such I gain my power from the dreams of everyone. We all have our own domains, Great Red explained. Issei blinked and looked around before speaking up. So what am I here for? He asked, confused. Great Red looked at him in the eyes before replying. You, Issei Hyoudou, interest me. You were betrayed by everyone that you thought cared for. You come back wanting nothing more to right the wrongs of the world, carving a path that will no doubt change the future forever. What is it that drives you, Issei? Who is Issei Hyoudou? Who are you? That is what I want to know. I wanted to see the man behind it all, the man that vowed to change everything. The man that defeated Hades when he returned to the underworld. The man that caused a shockwave of turmoil among the factions. Who are you, Issei Hyoudou? Great Red said aloud. Issei blinked. He knew what he was asking. I am just a normal person who wants nothing more to live his life without the heartbreak. I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone. I will not stand for it. Even if it takes 1,000 years, I will right the wrongs of this cruel world, he shouted in fury. It seemed Great Red got his answer as he gave out a hearty laugh. He could feel the determination and will etched in his voice. Very well, Issei Hyoudou, you have proven your conviction to me. I just wanted to know if you would follow your plans to the ends of the world and beyond, Great Red said. Issei blinked, then decided to speak up. So what did you bring me here for then? He asked, confused. Great Red sighed, then replied. You are waging war, Issei. Tides have turned and the factions are mobilizing. I have seen glimpses of others' dreams and I know what you will face. This war would be calling the Great War a skirmish in comparison. You are facing off against strong enemies. Some of them will have enough power to stand up to you for a while. One is Offai's. She has sided with the factions and wants to get you out of the picture, Great Red said. Before Issei could speak, Great Red continued. So I have decided, once you awake, come to the dimensional gap and we will have a battle. You will prove to me that you are worthy of my strength, Great Red explained. Issei's eyes went wide. He was going to fight the apocalypse dragon. In order to get more strength and another ally, he was going to fight the second most powerful being to exist, and he knew Great Red wasn't going to hold back at all. He was going to have to really fight to win him over. With that said, Great Red released him, and Issei was back in his normal dream. Scene break, Asgard. Odin, the king of the Norse gods, wasn't expecting to be visited by the Lucifer of the underworld. He knew if he was here, then it was serious. "Sirzech, what do I owe the pleasure of your visit today?" he asked, intrigued. Sirzech looked serious. Odin knew it wasn't the time for jokes at all. "I trust you have heard of Issei Hyoudou?" Sirzech asked. Odin narrowed his eyes. He heard about the boy, how he was waging war against the factions. The Norse hoped to stay neutral and not face the wrath of the boy, but if Sirzech was here, then it was serious. "Yes, I do know about him and what is currently going on," he answered. Sirzech sighed as he knew what he was about to ask Odin would be tough. "We have new information about him. He is gathering powerful allies. We know he has Cockabeel and Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, on his side. Who knows who else he is aiming for and has already gathered," Sirzech explained. Odin rubbed his chin and thought. It was truly troubling. It looked like they weren't going to be able to stay neutral as they thought. "So you came here wanting Asgard's help in this war," he said aloud. Sirzech nodded respectfully. Odin sighed. He knew it was the right thing to do. Political relations would be tested and wouldn't be the way they were without risks. "Very well, Sirzech, you will have Asgard's support in this war," Odin commanded with authority. Sirzech sighed and thanked Odin. He had to leave and prepare the underworld. As he left Odin's side and called in his son Thor. Thor was surprised when he got a summons by his father. He knew it was serious. "Father, what is the matter?" he asked, confused. Odin sighed before replying to Thor. "We are going to aid the factions in the war against Issei Hyoudou," he said. Thor was confused. "I thought we were going to stay neutral," he asked. "It seems he has gathered some strong allies and Sirzech came today to ask me," he answered. Thor knew now it was serious. The call of battle was coming closer. He knew it was only a matter of time before until all of hell and heaven was unleashed in one gigantic battle. Unbeknownst to anyone, a pair of golden eyes opened for the first time in 2 weeks, belonging to none other than Issei Hyoudou. He was going to shake the very foundation of the supernatural world with his new power in the next days to come. Chapter 14, Awakened. Golden brown eyes looked towards the ceiling fan as he awoke. Issei Hyoudou was awake for the first time in 3 weeks. He sat up and looked at his arms. He could see his body had changed. He looked around the room he was in to find no one. He knew he was in the mansion, though. "Drake," he muttered. The voice came out a second later. "How are you feeling?" It was the red dragon. Issei cracked his neck and started to stand up. "A little sore," he muttered. "Your power has significantly risen too," Bahamut spoke up. He then remembered what he dreamed of. He didn't know if Bahamut or Drake knew. "How do I get to the dimensional gap?" he asked. They were a little silent after that statement. "Great Red wanted to fight you and he won't hold back, so you have to be ready. To get to it can be hard. Yasaka can open the dragon gate. You could create a tier and enter that way," Drake said. Issei nodded. He knew what he was going to do. "This will be your biggest fight yet, and what Drake says is true. Dragons are races of pride and will not hesitate," Bahamut said. Issei knew this battle was about to be nothing like he had ever done. It was going to be a challenge. He needed to figure out how his power was affected quickly. He nodded and started walk towards the door. He looked down the stairs to see no one coming up. He wondered what time it was. He rubbed his neck and walked downstairs. As he looked to the couch, he saw everyone. "Issei," they all yelled. He waved them off. He then noticed a new face in the mansion. "How are you feeling?" Rainer asked quickly. "Good, just a little sore," he replied. He looked to Penemu. "Who's this?" he asked. Vali was the one to speak up. "Penemu, she left the Grigori, saying Azazel is starting to get paranoid." Vali. Ita shrugged his shoulders. "There is something I need to say," he started. They all started listening intently. "We might get a new ally," he started. They all were wondering who it was. "Who is it?" Cockabeel asked as he saw Issei's expression. He knew it was serious. Great Red brought me to the dimensional gap while I was unconscious. He has challenged me, he said. Cockabill spat out his drink after hearing that. You are going to fight the apocalypse dragon, he shrieked. Everyone had the same thought. I have no choice, he knows something we don't. He informed me what we face might be a little more than we originally thought, he replied. Everyone sighed. They knew Issei was going to do it. You're going to face him, so you need to be ready, Cockabill said. Issei nodded. Great Red, even if you have Bahamut, it will still be a tough match. Expect massive energy blasts and some serious pressure. If you're fighting in the dimensional gap, you need to take the fight away from there. That's his home turf, so he has the home field advantage, Cockabill said. Issei nodded to his statement. He knew Cockabill was actually pretty smart. He knew what he was talking about overall. Great Red is a dragon. He is the very first beings to exist. He has lived in the gap ever since. He has gotten used to the pressure it has. You are not. You need to be prepared to withstand it, Tiamat said suddenly. Issei looked at Tiamat curiously and spoke up. What do you mean? He asked. You're going to be facing the toughest opponent you have ever faced. You can't hold anything back at all. I highly doubt he will, she said. Issei nodded to her statement. It was true. He knew this was going to be the biggest fight ever. They all watched as he stood up. Then we are going to train for a bit. In a few days I will then go to Yasaka to open the dragon gates, he said. Penemu watched as everyone followed him without a word. It was odd to her. She wondered what earned their complete trust. Penemu was only told the need-to-know basis on what happened to Issei Hyoudou, so she would have some parts of the story to hear from the man himself. So today we are going to resume our training. However, I have something different planned out, he started. Everyone started to listen intently to him. They wondered what they were going to do. Tiamat, Cockabill, and Donesik, you three will be facing me in a 3v1 match, he said. Everyone was shocked. That was a gigantic understatement. Even awestruck wouldn't fit it. Why? Donesik asked lazily. Everyone wanted to know as well. I need to know the full extent of my power. It has changed. I want you three to not hold anything back. Neither will I, he said aloud. They were all shocked beyond belief. He was going to truly use his power. Whenever he sparred with them, he made sure never to overdo it. He would only use balance breaker, and that was enough to make volley start to be pressured. They wondered what they were going to see today. Very well, Cockabill said aloud. Tiamat nodded. You asked for it, Donesik said with a grin. Issei nodded and the three of them walked to the circle. The rest of them watched as he put a barrier around the four of them. It was about to start. Whenever you're ready, Issei said. He watched all of them as he prepared for the fight. He knew in terms of power Tiamat was the clear victor over the other two, but Cockabill had the advantage of being a warmonger. He knew how to fight, he knew what to expect as well. Donesik was in the same league as Cockabill, being a few pairs of wings less didn't really matter. Issei knew Donesik was crafty and would take every opportunity to get at him. Issei quickly avoided a light spear that was aimed right for his heart. He looked to Cockabill to see a shit-eating grin. He quickly looked behind him to see Donesik. He was holding a light axe. Issei cursed himself as he knew Donesik had learned how to change his weapon shape. He narrowly avoided a strike that connected with the ground and sent a shockwave across the area. Issei noticed Tiamat was silent. She then broke into a sprint and came towards him. She was glowing a bright blue. She was gathering her energy as she charged at him. Issei knew they were working somewhat as a team. He knew with 3 attacks coming his way, he would not be able to avoid them all. It was a debate on which one to purposefully take a hit. A charged punch by Tiamat, a gigantic light spear by Cockabill, or a crushing axe by Donesik. Screw it, he thought. He then ran forwards to Tiamat and stopped a few feet from her. He quickly caught both of Donesik and Cockabill's attacks easily. However, he was left open for a punch that was sent to his gut and made him skid back. He grinned as he looked up. They had the same expressions. I really didn't expect you to get a hit on me that quickly. I'm impressed. However, it's now time to get serious, he said. They all watched as his energy rose quickly. All three of them looked at each other and nodded. They knew this was coming. Booster. They all watched in awe as the boosted gear activate. It was more powerful than what they had seen last. Penemu had no coherent thoughts. She didn't expect him to be this strong. She knew there was more power to come as well, so she continued to watch. Tiamat suddenly charged at Issei. Cockabeel and Donasik suddenly followed behind her. Issei watched their movements like a hawk. It was strange to him. He could see the power rise off of them, but he could also see where it was being directed. Tiamat's fist was coming closer as he watched it. With one hand, he quickly caught it and spun her around and threw her at Cockabeel, sending them flying back. Issei looked to Donasik, who summoned another axe. He was dual-wielding light axes. Issei groaned after seeing that. Donasik quickly charged after him. Issei charged forward as well to meet him. Before anyone knew it, Issei's fist met the crossed axes as Donasik blocked. Issei knew he had to get rid of one of the axes to get. He had something that he could use, however that short time that they met it was enough for Tiamat and Cockabeel to get back up. Issei quickly backflipped to avoid a fireball sent at him. He quickly regained his bearings and decided it was time once again to step it up a bit. He quickly dashed backwards and looked at his opponents. Donasik was the closest one to him. Tiamat and Cockabeel had recently gotten up again and were more towards the back of the barrier. Donasik would be the easiest to take out, but he knew the moment he went after him, Tiamat and Cockabeel would be right behind him. He needed to separate them for a little while so that he could deal with each one individually. He needed to come up with a plan quickly. He quickly jumped up to avoid an energy blast from Tiamat. It was strange. It was like he knew it was coming ahead of time. It was like that for all of the attacks he faced. He knew where they would land and how to avoid them and strike back in turn. He landed back on the ground and looked at Donasik. Booster. Everyone watched as he charged at Donasik. They knew he was serious now. Penemu's eyes were wide when she saw the power that was being used by him. They watched as Donasik narrowly avoided a fist aimed at him. However, he failed to notice Issei was already sending a roundhouse kick. The kick was aimed directly at his collarbone. They watched as Donasik crumpled on the floor. Issei looked to Cockabeel next. He knew Donasik would be down for a little bit. He bought some time to take on the others. He charged once again, this time towards Cockabeel. Booster. Cockabeel charged as well. They both met with a clash of fists. Tiamat was suddenly charging in to help Cockabeel. Issei was starting to get a little annoyed. Every time he went towards someone, another came towards him. He should have expected it really though. It was a 3v1 fight and he wanted to push himself. It was time once again to step it up. Welsh Dragon Annihilation Balance Breaker. Those 5 words were enough to make everyone flinch. The power that was gathering around Issei was incredible. It started to swirl around him and he donned his armor. Blade. Everyone was shocked. He was using a scalon. The dragon-slaying sword. Issei was suddenly in a much higher advantage now. He was outmatched, sure, but he had power over them with that blade. Tiamat looked very cautiously at the blade. Cockabeel wasn't any better at all. He knew of the power of dragon-slaying magic, very dangerous to them. If Issei was using it, they were truly starting to force him to pull out everything he had. Cockabeel, you may already know this, but that blade will be your end if you don't dodge it. Dragon Slayers aren't normally powerful enough to one hit, but combined with his new power, you'd be toast in one slice from that blade, Tiamat said. She looked to Donasik to see him still down. He most likely wasn't going to be able to fight now, and if Issei powered up even more, it would only add more to it. She looked to Cockabeel and they both nodded at each other. They both charged at Issei. Tiamat was glowing blue. She was releasing more power than before. Issei quickly dashed forwards again with a scalon aimed. Booster. They were starting to fear the barrier might break. Issei was exerting a lot of pressure as he started to power up even more. Tiamat backed up a bit as she felt his power increase. Cockabeel did the same. It was starting to get interesting. Everyone charged at the same time. Cockabeel needed to watch out for that sword. As Iskalin came swinging, he quickly formed a light spear and blocked with it. A screeching noise flew across the area as the blade and spear met. Everyone outside was watching with anticipation. Tiamat saw this as her chance and charged while Issei was occupied with Cockabeel. Issei knew this was coming. Boosta. As that sound rang out, Issei pulled his left leg back while still pressing against Cockabeel's light spear. Cockabeel looked at what he was doing and knew it was too late. With one power-packed kick, Issei sent Cockabeel flying into the barrier. He was down. One down, one to go. Tiamat versus Issei. Tiamat decided it was time. Issei watched her as she started glowing a sapphire blue. Her power was rising. She was going into her dragon form. Before anyone knew it, an explosion of power was released, and standing in place of Tiamat's human form was a big blue western dragon. She was staring at Issei intently. Well, Issei, it seems like it's just me and you. Let's finish this, Tiamat roared. She knew her attempts were futile. Even so, it was her pride as a dragon that pushed her forwards. If she was going down, she was going down swinging like hell. Issei grinned as she fired off several fireballs towards him. He quickly dashed to avoid one of them. He could see 3 more coming towards him. He quickly charged straight for the second one that was coming. He aimed a scalpel at it. With one quick slice, he cleanly cut the second fireball in half, completely disposing of it. Everyone was at awe of the power he was using effortlessly. It looked to them like it was second nature. They wondered what was going on. It seemed Issei was acting on instinct. The third fireball was closing on Issei fast. However, Issei wasn't even phased on bit. Looking at it, he grinned and charged once again. This time he aimed the flat of his blade towards the fireball. He was intent on hitting back at Tiamat when the fireball finally got within range. He swung the blade with the flat aimed at the fireball. There was a loud noise that rang out after the fireball was struck back by Iskalin. Tiamat was honestly impressed. He used Iskalin like a bat and hit her fireball back at her. With a flap of her wings, she quickly avoided it though. Cockabeel and Donasik decided it was time to withdraw, so they exited the barrier, leaving Tiamat left. Issei looked at the fourth and final fireball that was coming his way. He looked to Tiamat and grinned. "You have shown me your power, Tiamat. Now I will do the same," he said aloud. Everyone wondered what he was going to do. They watched as he held his hand out with his palm facing upwards. Rainier, Calawarner, and Donhasik eyes widened as they knew what was coming. A sphere of annihilation. Tiamat suddenly felt the power that was rising dramatically in Issei. She looked to his palm to see a small black orb of energy form above his palm. It had pitch black lightning coursing through it. She could tell it was extremely powerful. She watched curiously as he clenched his fist around the orb. When he opened it back up, the orb grew in size. It was the same size as the fireball that was coming towards him. He looked to Tiamat and grinned before throwing it. Rainier, Calawarner, and Donasik all looked fearful when it was thrown. "Everyone brace yourselves," they all screamed as they put up their guard. Everyone quickly did the same and watched as the sphere and fireball flew at each other. To say they were shocked would be an understatement. As the two attacks clashed, it was obvious which one was going to win. The sphere of annihilation quickly expanded as it came in contact with the fireball, effectively swallowing it whole and erasing it. Tiamat had no words. Her fireballs was utterly obliterated without an effort. She knew Issei took some good hits as well, so in her mind it was a good fight either way. "I must say, Tiamat, that was something. I never expected you 3 to make go past balance breaker. I think I'm ready for red," he said aloud. Cockabeel and Donasik were a little roughed up, but they would heal real easily. Everyone looked to Issei as he powered down. Penemu was completely and utterly stupefied at the whole thing. She never expected it at all. To think that he was that powerful, she knew she needed to think. As the scale mill armor fell on the ground, everyone looked at him a bit cautiously. He knew they had just seen a lot of power being used to overpower 3 opponents. Issei took a look at the three of them again. Tiamat was fine, Cockabeel was able to stand, and Donasik looked fine as well. So what's next? Vali asked. Issei looked up for a moment, thinking he knew it was almost time. Tomorrow I will go to Yasaka's and have her open the gate. After that we begin, he said. They didn't know what he meant by begin, but they knew one thing. Something was coming, and it was coming very soon.